Chapter 982. P.S. I want to hear more of your voices and receive more of your suggestions. Search for the WeChat account @Dread and add me to give more support to the struggle for the Great Path. After Zhang Yan made the arrangements, he led the demon dragons to the Dan room of the Hall of Duzhen. He turned on the fire and threw the dragon's spine inside. The golden chains hung up the cauldron and 3 dragons soared into the clouds. They flew around the bottom of the cauldron and spat out fire. However, even if he were to continuously refine it like this, it would take several years for it to reach a certain level of mastery. At that time, he would need more dragons to listen to him. However, it would take at least a dozen years for this dragon spine to be useful. Taking advantage of this period of time, he pondered where to go to find the Earth-Een treasure material. This kind of material usually grew in places with abundant earth chi. 10,000 years ago, it was easy to find, but now it was somewhat difficult. Although there were some in the Hall of Duzhen, the good stuff had long been used up. As for the remaining ones, they were of poor quality and he did not care for them. After thinking for a while, he issued a decree and ordered the Spiritual Mechanism Institute to search for it. However, the treasures stored in the Spiritual Mechanism Institute, other than the ones collected by his own sect, also came from the offerings of the small sects below. This kind of treasured material that was born in an extraordinary place, unless it was by chance, it was not something that those cultivators with shallow cultivation could obtain. Therefore, he only took care of it and did not have any expectations. It was possible that the small world of White Deer Continent had this item, but even if it did, it should have been taken by a few sections. The Duchen sect was the largest sect in this area, so it was possible that they had collected it. Thus, he ordered Jingyu to send a letter to inquire about it. In fact, the place where it was most abundant was in the demonic cave. The 6 demonic sects must have it, but unless he went there personally, he would not be able to get it. It was obviously not the time to go to war. Other than that, in fact, there was another place that he could get it. It was the Huanzhen Temple, one of the 10 Shenmen. The Huanzhen Temple had fought with the demonic sects for thousands of years. Although many of their disciples were sacrificed, they also obtained many good things from the demonic sections. He thought, although I have cultivated the 5 turns of strength, I still have to find a way to get rid of the demonic nature. I had the intention to seek guidance from the people of Huanzhen Temple. Since this is the case, it seems that I have to make a trip here. However, he did not have any contact with the 2 Zenrins of Huanzhen Temple in the past. With his current status, if he were to suddenly visit them, not only would it be rude, but it would also cause too much commotion and attract the attention of other sections. It would be better for him to ask his disciple to go on his behalf. After thinking about it, he then sent a talisman towards Clear Nether Heavenly Lake. Not long after, the forbidden spirit said, "Master, Lady Wang is here." Zhang Yan said, "Call her in." Wang Kaiwei entered the hall and bowed respectfully. Disciple pays her respects to Master. I wish Master a long life. Zhang Yan glanced at her and saw that her cultivation had improved considerably. Clearly, he was attentive and nodded his head slightly. He said, "During the Battle of the Devil's Cave, the Huanzhen Temple gave me the exorcism manual. Zhenren Han said that he would exchange several supernatural powers for it. However, the people from the Huanzhen Temple did not ask for it. This time, you can send it over on my behalf. Also, I have a few words of advice." He pointed his finger and 3 talisman floated down and transmitted a few words at the same time. Wang Kaiwei received the talisman and listened attentively. Finally, she bowed. She said solemnly, "Disciple will not delay Master's matter." Southwest of Donghua Continent, Gutsong Mountain. This mountain was thousands of feet underground. After the Devil's Tribulation, a small Devil's Cave was born. Later on, 3 to 5 Devil's sects itinerant cultivators occupied this place. Afraid that it would be taken away, they established a sect and elected a person called Fu Mian as the headmaster. They also worshipped the Netherworld Spring sect as their superior sect. With this name, even though the small Devil's Cave had been flourishing for hundreds of years, no one dared to snatch it away. Instead, more and more itinerant cultivators came to seek refuge here. However, there were thousands of ravines in this Devil's Cave and the terrain was broken. The few places where spiritual vigor flourished were actually hundreds of miles away from each other. Moreover, these people came from different places and did not usually cultivate in the same place. Therefore, other than those who were friendly with each other, the rest did not interact much. However, today, everyone in the sect received a letter. It was the headmaster, Fu Mian, who ordered him to go for a while. Because of his solemn tone, everyone felt that it was not a small matter. When the time came, everyone came to the main hall. After entering the cave hall, they saw Fu Mian sitting on the main seat and came forward to greet him. Fu Mian waited for everyone to sit down. He took a few glances and saw that one person was missing. He immediately frowned and said, "Why is there someone else who is not here yet?" A female cultivator with a high bun said, "Jinren Guo will be reincarnating in a few days. I'm afraid he can't make it." Fu Mian knew that this person's cultivation was not high. Since the day of reincarnation was approaching, he did not ask any more. He said, "I invited my fellow Taoists here because of the spirit's cave." Everyone below was stunned. Fu Mian paused and said in a deep voice, "The High Sect ordered us to attack the Panjun Gorge and try to break the altar here." As soon as he said this, everyone's expression changed. One of them suddenly stood up and said in shock, "The Panjun Gorge is close to the spirit's cave. The Yuxiao school has been operating for a long time. Why would the High Sect order us to attack this place? Could it be that they want us to die?" Fu Mian looked at him and said, "Jinren Tang, don't be anxious. This time, I'm not alone. The High Sect has other reinforcements." That Taoist Tang did not sit down. He asked, "May I know who the reinforcements are?" Fu Mian said, "If I'm not mistaken, it should be the sect's Elder Sima Quan." Taoist Tang asked again, "Is it just Elder Sima alone?" Fu Mian nodded and said, "Elder Sima has long cultivated the Yuaning Dharmakaya. His cultivation is profound, you don't have to worry." Someone below muttered, "What's the use of having one more? Elder Li's supernatural power is great, but if he's not careful he'll still end up being killed." The cave became silent. A few years ago, the Netherworld Spring Sect's Elder Lurong's mother was ordered to break the siege for the Shueshua sect in the north. In the end, she was intercepted by LV Junyang from the Qinsong school. After a fierce battle, she was defeated. She escaped all the way to Mount Luojin, which was not far from here. In the end, she was caught and killed by LV Junyang there. At that time, everyone saw it from afar, so it left a deep impression on them. Fu Mian saw that everyone's face was gloomy, so he reminded them, when the Damo sect was established, everyone was also ambitious. "Could it be that you've all forgotten the vow we made?" A red-robed cultivator sighed and said, "How could we forget? It's just that we're too weak to fight against the big sects of Xianmen." Fu Mian looked at everyone and said, "The High Sect has already agreed. As long as you're willing to contribute this time, I'll break open the Kaijun Gorge. After we fight for the Spirit Cave, you're willing to help me set up my sect here." The red-robed cultivator was stunned at first. Then, his eyes lit up and he asked, "Is this true?" Fu Mian took out a scroll with both hands and said, "The High Sect's imperial edict is here. How can it be fake?" Taoist Tang said, "Can we take a look at it?" Fu Mian said, "Of course." He passed the scroll down and allowed everyone to take a look. After reading it, everyone looked excited. If they could obtain the Spirit Cave as the foundation of their sect, then their sect could become the seventh big sect of spiritual sects in the future. Everyone here could become the founder of a sect. The red-robed cultivator rubbed his hands and said, "We can give it a try." That Taoist Tang said coldly, "It's not that I want to dampen your spirits, but can we really take down the Panjun Gorge with just us? I hope it's not a pie in the sky." This was like a bucket of cold water being poured on them. However, it extinguished everyone's burning desire that just now had been ignited. Fu Mian frowned slightly and said, "Everyone, don't worry. I have a method. If I use it, I have an 80% chance of success." The red-robed cultivator could not help but ask, "What is it?" Fu Mian clapped his hands, and dozens of strong men carried 3 bronze cauldrons into the cave. The cauldrons' lids were pressed tightly, and there were vermilion talismans stuck on them. The high-bun female cultivator asked curiously, "What is this?" Fu Mian said, "There are 3 true demons that have cultivated for more than 1,000 years suppressed here." What? As soon as he said that, everyone here was so shocked that they stood up and retreated far away. Taoist Tang said with a solemn expression, "Sect leader Fu, what do you mean?" A true demon would gain sentience after 300 years. If it had 700 years of cultivation, its power would be comparable to that of a Yuanine cultivator. As for those who had cultivated for more than 1,000 years, they would be able to fight against a cultivator who had cultivated a Yuanine body. One step further and they would be called a heavenly demon. Although it was still far from the rumored Genin demon, this thing could already transform into a formless form and had the ability to invade people's hearts. How could everyone here not be afraid? Fu Mian said, "Everyone, don't panic. This item was given to us by the Exalted Sect, and they also taught us how to control demons. When we attack the Panjun Gorge, it will be a great weapon for us." Taoist Tang snorted and said, "Let me ask you something. Is this true demon self-formed, or was it refined by someone?" Fu Mian said unwillingly, "No, it's not refined by someone." Taoist Tang said sternly, "Sect leader, please don't play with fire. How can a true demon like this be used by someone? Even Reverend Ru Huang was infected by this demon back then, and his personality changed. That was why he became so cruel and senseless. Even the people from the heavenly abode ended up like this, let alone us. Usually, the devil heads used by the devil sect were harvested before they matured. In the future, as their cultivation improved, the devil head would gradually become stronger. However, there were also those who relied on their tyrannical skills to capture those who had cultivated for hundreds of years. If they had waited for more than 1,000 years, it would be hard to subdue them without special methods. Even the Reverend of the heavenly abode rarely used them. Therefore, once the disciples of the demon sect saw them, they would think of ways to kill them. Fu Mian retorted, "The demons used by Reverend Ru Huang all have 2,000 to 3,000 years of cultivation. How can the two be compared?" The red-robed cultivator said, "Sect leader, if the Exalted Sect could really subdue these demons, why would they need us to do it? This little brother feels that there is something strange about this place." The high-bun female cultivator also said, "This thing can hurt others, but it can also hurt me. Brother, please reconsider." Fu Mian was very displeased as he said, "This time, the location of the spirit cave just happens to be beside our small spirit cave. It's truly a chance bestowed by the heavens. Everyone's lifespans aren't young anymore. If we miss this chance, then there'll really be no path forward." At this point, his voice gradually became lower. "The Exalted Sect has protected me for hundreds of years and has never ordered me to do anything. If I don't obey now, you guys should know what will happen to me." Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Fu Mian stood up and said, "Whether to use this method or not, it's up to you guys to decide." As he said that, he flicked his sleeves and went to the back of the hall. After he left, the high-bun female cultivator said hesitantly, "I'm afraid we can't disobey the Exalted Sect's order." Taoist Tang was also silent. The red-robed cultivator thought about it and sighed, "Since we can't refuse, I think we should just agree. When the time comes, we won't use them if we can. If it really doesn't work, we can't release all of them. Just one will do. Otherwise, if they eat each other and use their own kind to boost their cultivation, once they turn into heavenly demons, we won't have any physiology to speak of." Chapter 983. Wang Kaiwei left the Yudzong sect on a jade bamboo cloud raft. Immortal clouds curled in spirals as she traveled westward. She wasn't in a hurry to get to Huanjin Temple. Along the way, she visited a few small sects that were on good terms with Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake. Along the way, she saw altars and restrictive formations everywhere. She thought to herself, Zhenren Chen's arrangements are so strict. It seems that the Blood Soul sect won't be able to do anything this time. It's just that compared to Master's time, they're still lacking. She stopped and walked for 2 days. She saw the mountain gate of Biu Pavilion not far away. Thinking that Han Zwicheng was cultivating here, she felt that as his senior sister, she couldn't not enter. Seeing that there was a spell altar below, he pushed the cloud raft down. This altar was close to the mountain gate of Bu Pavilion. Not only were there dozens of deacon disciples, but they also sent an elder to guard it. At this moment, they saw an elegant female cultivator riding a cloud raft from the sky. She was surrounded by rays of light and strong winds. They knew she was no ordinary person. The elder stepped forward and cupped his hands, saying, "May I know where this Taoist master is from?" Wang Kaiwei revealed her identity on the cloud raft. When the elder heard this, his expression immediately became much more respectful. He said, "So it's Taoist Master Wang who has arrived. Please wait a moment, I will order someone to go inside and report." He turned around and said a few words. Immediately, a disciple flew out to report to the mountain gate. Although he was polite, he didn't dare to open the altar. He was a cautious person. Demon sect often had ways to change their appearance, so he was afraid that she was a demon in disguise. Wang Kaiwei knew that he was worried. She put herself in his shoes and could understand his actions. Han Zhuqing was currently discussing sect matters with Yan Xia in the hall. For the past decade or so, he had been cultivating diligently in the clear nether heavenly lake, and his cultivation had improved quite a bit. He originally planned on coming out of seclusion only after he reached the nascent soul realm, but the date of the Devil's Cave's appearance was getting closer and closer, and the Blood Soul sect was making frequent movements as well. Since there were quite a few altars that the Blue Feather Pavilion had to guard, it was very difficult to deal with them. Just as he was speaking, he heard someone come in from outside to report that Wang Kaiwei had arrived at the door. He couldn't help but be startled, then said happily, "How did third senior sister get here?" He stood up and said, "Madam, it's rare for third senior sister to come here. Come with me to welcome her." Yan Xia said, "That's how it should be." She hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Why don't you call little brother as well?" Han Zhuqing nodded. Yan Xia let out a light sigh of relief. She ordered someone to summon Yan Xiaoyang. The three of them opened the mountain gate's great formation and walked out together. When Han Zhuqing saw Wang Kaiwei outside, he hurriedly went forward to greet her. Although he wasn't close to this senior apprentice sister of his, she had always taken care of him ever since he began cultivating. After managing clear nether heavenly lake, she would occasionally order people to send him some pills and precious materials. He was very grateful towards her. Wang Kaiwei took a few glances at him and said with relief, "Junior Marshal brother, it seems like you haven't slacked off on your cultivation after returning." Han Zhuqing said in shame, "Junior Marshal brother has neglected his cultivation in the past. Now I've come to my senses. Cultivators don't seek to attain the great Tao, but they can't always be immersed in singing the wind and playing with the moon." Wang Kaiwei couldn't help but feel even happier when she heard this. She said, "It's good that Junior Marshal brother understands. If you can take another step forward, I'm sure our esteemed master will be comforted if he learns of this." Han Zhuqing repeatedly said yes. After exchanging a few pleasantries outside, everyone welcomed her into the manor. Once they were seated in the hall, Yan Xia came up first and clasped her hands. She said apologetically, "Senior Marshal sister, I apologize for this. Recently, the number of disciples in the sect has been sparse, and the strength to guard the mountain gate is insufficient. I once strictly ordered that we cannot privately open the restrictions without the sect's orders, which is why that elder was so cautious. It wasn't that I was disrespectful to Senior Marshal sister, so please don't blame me." Wang Kaiwei hadn't taken this matter to heart in the first place. She said gently, "Junior Marshal sister Yan's words are too serious. I also know that it's not easy for you, so why would I blame you?" Yan Xiaoyang suddenly interrupted. "Spiritual Master Chen has transferred manpower from my Blue Feather Pavilion many times to guard the various spell altars. 70% of the disciples in the sect are outside, and even guarding the mountain gate is strained. Spiritual Master Wang, I wonder if you can say a few words in front of Spiritual Master Chen?" Wang Kaiwei said in surprise, "There's such a thing?" Yan Xia shot a stern glance at Yan Xiaoyang, stopping him from speaking any further. Only then did she say, "Senior sister, don't listen to my little brother's nonsense. Taoist Master Chen handles matters fairly. Although quite a few places have been added to guard, none of them are vital areas. Up until now, not a single elder has fallen. The spell altars and restrictive formations that Qinsong School had set up in the north were several times larger than when Zhang Yan was still alive, so they needed even more manpower. After Qin Taiping passed away, Chen Feng couldn't transfer too many people from the aristocratic families. In order to maintain this situation, he could only think of a way from the small sections. Fortunately, he knew that Blue Feather Pavilion was connected to the bright nether heavenly lake, so he didn't make things too difficult for them. Yan Xiaoyang, however, was unwilling to accept this. He said, "Sister, the demon cave hasn't truly appeared yet, so you still don't know how powerful it is. When the time comes, it will be very difficult to deal with it so easily. You absolutely cannot lower your guard." Yan Xia shook her head. "Spiritual Master Chen has already been very lenient towards me for the sake of your brother-in-law. Compared to the other families, he is already much better. You cannot be greedy." Yan Xiaoyang sneered. Brother-in-law's face? His tone was quite disdainful. Normally, he might have mocked and ridiculed her, but when he saw Wang Caiwei's gaze, he realized that he had spoken indiscreetly and averted his gaze slightly. Yan Xia glared at him, while Han Zhuqing said nothing. Wang Caiwei saw this and frowned slightly. The atmosphere was a bit stiff for a moment. Yan Xia complained to Yan Xiaoyang in her heart, sighed, and said, "It's rare for senior sister to come here. Why don't you stay for a few days?" Wang Caiwei had no intention of staying for long, but she looked at Han Zhuqing, thought for a moment, and nodded in agreement. On the second day, Han Zhuqing and his wife invited Wang Caiwei to a banquet at the back of the mountain. The mountain was full of pear blossoms, like the feathers of snow and jade. From time to time, colorful birds would fly about, creating a beautiful scenery. Wang Caiwei said with a smile, "I heard that junior brother has established 100 spirits garden, and that there are many rare little beasts inside. Why don't you take me there to take a look?" Han Zhuqing said cheerfully, "I will naturally follow senior sister's orders." The Yan siblings knew that they had something to say, so they didn't follow. Wang Caiwei followed Han Zhuqing for a while, and when they came out, she said, "Junior brother, I came out this time because my master ordered me to go to another sect. I can't stay here for long, so I have to leave now." Han Zhuqing was surprised. He wanted to urge her to stay, but when he thought of her master's orders, he didn't say anything more. He hurriedly said, "Then little brother will summon Xia and Xia to see you off." Wang Caiwei shook her head lightly and said, "No need to summon them." Then she looked him in the eye and said, "Junior brother, let me tell you something. You don't need to get too involved in the battle of the Devil's Cave. The most important thing is to improve your own cultivation. Although we cultivators don't need to pay too much attention to the words of others, if one's foundation is shallow and blindly forbearing, it isn't humility. It's only incompetence and weakness. Only when you reach the peak and look down on everyone else can you transcend the world." Han Zhuqing carefully digested the meaning of her words. He was surprised at first, and then he seemed to understand. He bowed deeply and said, "Little brother has learned something." Wang Caiwei's voice softened a bit, and she said, "Later, senior sister will write a letter to Zhenren Chen, saying that it isn't easy for you all. This way, you can have more time to cultivate. If you can return to clear nether heavenly lake and cultivate with your fellow sect members, that would be the best." Han Zhuqing thought about it, and shook his head, and said, "Forget it. Zhenren Chen has invited little brother to banquets a few times, and from what he said, it isn't easy for him to manage the overall situation." Wang Caiwei said lightly, "Zhenren Chen can take care of the disciples of the aristocratic families, but can't he take care of my clear nether bloodline?" Han Zhuqing said, "This?" Wang Caiwei said, "Just listen to senior sister on this matter." Han Zhuqing felt that this senior apprentice sister originally treated people gently, but after taking control of the bright nether heavenly lake, her personality seemed to have become a bit more decisive. He couldn't help but feel a bit of awe, so he had no choice but to comply. As expected, Wang Caiwei didn't see the Yan sisters anymore. After bidding farewell to him, she took the cloud raft and left Bu Pavilion. After walking for another 2 days, she suddenly saw the sky darkening, and the surroundings were shaking. there was a dull sound echoing in the heaven and earth. She felt something was wrong, and suddenly stopped the cloud raft. She saw that the river was tumbling, and countless mountain rocks were rolling down from the hillside. Looking forward, she saw a ray of spiritual light rushing up to the sky in the southwest direction. She had seen such a scene before, and it was the sign of the Devil's Point appearing in the world. However, the previous time, 2 real and 3 fake points appeared at the same time, and so it was earth-shattering. This time, the momentum was relatively smaller. After looking deeply for a few times, she wrote a few letters on the cloud and sent them back to the mountain gate. Then, she collected her thoughts and headed in the direction of Huanjin Temple at a moderate speed. At the same time, in the Damo sect of the Old Song Mountain, the sect master Fu Mian also felt that the Spirit's Point had opened, and knew that it was time to move out. He led the sect's cultivators out, and through the gully passage, they headed towards the Devil's Point. Halfway there, they met up with the group of people led by Elder Sima Quan of the Netherworld Spring sect. After traveling for another 10 days, they arrived in front of the Panjun Gorge. There were mountains on both sides of the gorge, and the mountain ridge extended from the west to the east, like a person's arms waiting to be hugged. It was also the highest place within a radius of 10,000 miles. Below the gorge, there used to be a river of water, and its tributaries were connected to hundreds of formation boards. Now that the Spirit's Point had appeared, it happened to include a small part of the place, so if they wanted to fight for the Spirit's Point, they had to find a way to break through this place. Sima Quan said, "I will go to the south of this gorge to pretend to attack. When you see my momentum, immediately go all out. Don't break through the altar on the mountain within 2 hours." Fu Mian was shocked and said, "Elder Sima, aren't you going with me?" Sima Quan said, "You and I will go together, and one will be real and one will be real, so we can mutually complement each other. Moreover, you have the 3,000-year-old devils, so it shouldn't be difficult to break through this place." As he said this, his eyes suddenly became serious, and he looked at him up and down and said, "Why, did you not bring them out?" Fu Mian hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "How would I dare to disobey the order of the Supreme Sect? I have brought all 3 devils." Sima Quan's tone softened and said, "That's good. Remember not to delay things. After breaking through this altar, the sect will not be stingy with rewards or else. The pros and cons, sect master Fu should be clear about it, I don't need to say more." R1152. Chapter 984. Fu Mianxian was extremely afraid of the people from the Netherworld Spring sect, so he didn't dare to disobey. Just as he was about to reply, the red-robed Taoist stood up and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "We will definitely do our best to help the sect, but there is a problem here." Sima Quan looked at him and said, "What problem?" The red-robed Taoist said, "With the weight of the Panjun Gorge, once we enter the altar, the Yuxiao disciples will come to help. The true demon is controlled by humans, but our cultivation is not high. If we are injured, we won't be able to control it. It's a small matter if we lose our lives, but it's a big matter if we delay the sect. I have to inform Elder Sima." Sima Quan said, "I was wondering what it is. You don't have to worry, I have already made arrangements. If the plan succeeds, you can send a message and someone will come to help." The red-robed Taoist said, "If that's the case, then we can be at ease. But there is one more thing." Sima Quan didn't show any impatience and signaled him to continue. The red-robed Taoist cupped his hands and said, "There are many ways to spy on the demon in Xin. If we are seen through, we won't be able to return. What should we do then? Elder Sima, please tell us." Sima Quan revealed a look of admiration, but deep in his eyes, there was a trace of regret that was hard to be noticed by others. He said, "Your worries are not wrong, but you don't have to worry this time. Even though there are ways to distinguish between demons and devils in Shenmen, there are different methods. Only the Huanjin Temple is the best at this, and the people guarding this Panjun Gorge are all disciples of Yuxiao. There is not a single cultivator from outside. You can rest assured." The red-robed Taoist bowed again and said, "Thank you for clearing my doubts, Elder Sima. I have one last request." Sima Quan said generously, Don't worry about it. Tell me what's troubling you. The red-robed Taoist looked up and said, Elder Sima knows. We don't have many talismans. Other than the true demon, we only have the Guanli hammer that was given by the sect to break formations. Can I borrow a few more from you to protect myself? Sima Quan thought for a moment and said, Yes. What you said is also true. I happen to have a magic treasure that was also bestowed to me by the sect. However, I spent a lot of effort to refine it. You must remember to return it later. He clenched his fist, and a yellow light flew out from the back of his hand and landed on the shoulder of the red-robed cultivator. The latter turned his head and saw an ochre stone raccoon pattern on the robe. His eyes were lively as if they were alive. Sima Quan said indifferently, This thing is called Little Lingli. When it's used, you only need to summon it with your mind, and it can fly out to attack the enemy. Within a range of 300 feet, it's faster than a flying sword. As long as it's not a high-grade treasure weapon, it can be destroyed in one blow. Then his lips moved a few times. He transmitted the method of dispelling it over. Hearing this, the red-robed cultivator bowed deeply. He said, Thank you for the treasure, High Sect Elder. Sima Quan nodded and asked, What's your name? The red-robed cultivator said, Thank you for asking, High Sect Elder. I am Yen Zhiliang. Sima Quan didn't say anything else. With a wave of his hand, he led the dozen or so people behind him and charged out of the ground. They broke through the air and left. Just now, when they saw the two of them talking, the people of Damo sect were all on tenterhooks, afraid that Yen Zhiliang would offend the other party. Luckily, the other party didn't get angry even after he left. Taoist Tang's eyes were bright. He said with some admiration, I didn't expect Taoist brother Yen to be even braver than me, to actually speak to the high sect elder like this. Yen Zhiliang shook his head, looking as if he was relieved, and said, I had no choice. Now it seems that the high sect doesn't have the intention to send us away in vain. Everyone was shocked and said, What do you mean? Yen Zhiliang sighed. True demons have always been hard to control. The high sect wanted me to do this, but they didn't send a single person. I feel uneasy, so I tried to sound them out. Someone asked anxiously, Taoist brother Yen, why do you think that the high sect has no intention of harming me just now? Yen Zhiliang said, Just now, I'm asking for help, and I've also brought up the matter of borrowing the treasure. If the high sect only thinks of us as disposable pawns that can be casually thrown away, they can totally ignore us. However, not only did that Elder Sima agree to everything, he even reminded me to return it. It's obvious that he has no intention of doing so. Although everyone felt that something was wrong, they had no way out. Out of a desire to comfort themselves, they were willing to believe in his judgment. They all said, Taoist brother's words make sense. As they spoke, they saw a dozen or so streaks of light rising from the mountain ridge in the distance, flying towards the direction where Sima Quan was just now. Fu Mian looked left and right, and said, Elder Sima has already attracted the attention of Yuxiao School for us, it's time for us to act. However, Yen Zhiliang stopped him, and said, Sect Master, there aren't many people in Yuxiao just now, and Elder Sima won't find it hard to stop them. I think that this attack doesn't just involve us. Why don't we wait for a while, wait for other places to act too, and then we'll act. Just now is more likely. Fu Mian hesitated for a while, and said, If the high sect blames us, Yen Zhiliang said resolutely, as long as we can take down the Panjun Gorge, these things are nothing. Fu Mian thought for a while and said, All right, then let's wait for a while more. However, this wait went on for an hour. Fu Mian wanted to move a few times, but was persuaded by Yen Zhiliang to restrain himself. After another moment, in the distant sky, from the north and east, there were spiritual lights colliding in the sky. At the same time, dozens of streaks of light were seen heading towards the south. Yen Zhiliang took a step forward, took a few glances, and said happily, Sect Master, the time is here. It's time to act. Fu Mian couldn't help but be excited. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and he couldn't wait to leap forward. The 6 people behind him also rushed out from the underground tunnel and headed straight for the Panjun Gorge's altar. Not long after, Fu Mian felt a heavy pressure on his body, and his streaks of light were blocked. He knew that there was a restriction in front of him, and he didn't dare to go any further. He waved his sleeve, and a double-headed sledgehammer with two ends like drums flew out and smashed forward fiercely. There was a cracking sound, and the spiritual light was instantly shattered. The sledgehammer was also knocked back, but its spiritual light was a little dim. He didn't bother to look at it, and kept it in his sleeve. Then he took out a magic sword and flew up. Once the restriction was opened, the mist dispersed, and the situation on the altar was revealed. The altar was divided into 3 layers, and each layer was protected by a restriction. After one layer was broken, there were still 2 layers of protection left, and 4 Yuanian cultivators were sitting on top of it, each guarding one side. When they saw the cultivators of the Devil's Doctrine barging in, they shouted and threw their treasured weapons in the air and attacked from above. The 2 groups of people instantly clashed. At the moment when the restrictive light was broken, Fu Mian and the others didn't notice that above them, there were 2 people sitting in the clouds, and they were looking down coldly. One of them was skinny and looked to be in his 50s. He had white eyebrows that covered his eyes, and his body was filled with qi of Tao. The other person was dressed in green, and his eyes were like lightning, and he looked very capable. Both of them didn't have any high cloud above their heads, and it was obvious that they had cultivated the Yuanian Dharmakaya. The skinny Daoran shook his head and sighed. There are only 7 of them, and they seem to be scattered. They don't even have one who cultivated the Yuanian Dharmakaya, and they dare to come here? The Taoist in green said, "There must be backup." The skinny Daoran said with a smile, "It's good that there is backup. Let's make way and lure them to attack, and then we can attack." The old man in green said, "The few elders on the platform can't escape death." The skinny Daoran said with an expressionless face, "If we don't use the bait, how can we catch the big fish?" The Taoist in green stroked his beard. Although one of them was from the Zhou family, if they could lure a cultivator in the 3rd layer of the Yuanian Dharmakaya here, and then find a way to kill him, it would be worth it. He said, "Let's do it this way." Fu Mian and the others came prepared. The 7 of them refined their treasured weapons for a joint attack, and they also had treasured weapons to break the formation. Now that they exerted their strength, the 4 cultivators on the platform couldn't resist at all, and they were forced to retreat. Not long after, 2 more layers of restrictive light were broken, and they were forced to the last layer of the altar. Fu Mian shouted, "Junior brother Tang." Taoist Tang didn't say a word, and he flew to the sky. With a wave of his sleeve, hundreds of lightning beads poured down like a storm. This time, they were determined to get this level of lightning beads. Other than the ones they refined for hundreds of years for self-defense, they also got some from the Netherworld Spring sect. The 4 Yuanian Dharmakaya cultivators' expressions changed, and they quickly tried to dodge. But at this moment, Fu Mian took out a goose feather fan and waved it lightly. Instantly, a gust of wind pressed down, and the 4 of them were firmly pressed down on the altar. Seeing that they couldn't escape, the 4 of them didn't care about anything else. They took out their defensive treasures, and they used their protective treasures with all their might. On the altar, colorful lights burst out, covering several miles. Not long after the lightning beads fell, a series of explosions came from below, and it was deafening. Fu Mian didn't wait for the dust to settle, and he said again, "Junior sister Yuan." In the distance, the high-bun female cultivator nodded and took out a long scroll from her sleeve. There were over 100 skeletons tied to the top of the scroll, and as it swayed, it emitted mournful wails. Just now, the 4 Yushao cultivators had been struck by the lightning beads. Their defensive magic treasures had all lost their light and fallen to the ground. Even the light around their bodies had almost completely dissipated. When they heard this, their bodies immediately stiffened. Right at this moment, Yan Zhiliang's escape light dashed out and slashed down with his magic sword, cutting off the head of the person in the middle. The rest of the people also attacked and killed the other 3 people on the spot. Fu Mian and the others couldn't help but find it hard to believe that they had occupied this place so easily. However, it was far from time to be complacent. If the altar was destroyed, then at the very least, he would have to refine the core of this place. Moreover, with the importance of the Panjun Gorge, if this place was attacked, Yu Xiao would definitely rush over from all directions to save them. In a while, they would definitely fall into a heavy siege. However, the message had already been sent. It all depended on whether the upper sect could come to their aid in time. Fu Mian first took out a bamboo tube from his bosom and tossed it into the air. With a boom, a column of smoke rose straight up into the sky. He took a few glances, and with a wave of his sleeve, he placed the 3 completed bronze cauldrons on the altar. Then he walked to the front of the large tablet in the altar and sat down cross-legged. Things had gone too smoothly, but he faintly felt a little uneasy in his heart. He pondered for a while before saying, "I will refine this forbidden tablet. Everyone, please protect me at the side." Later, when Yu Xiao counterattack, if everyone can't resist it, or if there are changes in the situation, there is no need to worry about anything. You can release the 3 true devils. At worst, we will all perish together. Floating astronomy. Chapter 985. Fu Mian was sweating profusely. 2 hours had passed since he sent the message and he had yet to refine the monument. Jade Firmament disciples came from all directions and surrounded them. Although they were only attacking from afar with their Dharma artifacts and did not force their way in, they still gave them endless pressure. Yan Zhiliang's expression was solemn. Looking at the situation, Yu Xiao is using me as bait to lure the sect to rescue them. He took a few glances outside. When he followed Sima Quan over, it was almost night time. The sky was now dark and everything within 10 miles was pitch black. Apart from a few spiritual lights flickering in a few directions, there was no sign of anyone coming to rescue them. The female cultivator with the high bun said, "Someone from the upper sect might have already arrived here. Perhaps they have seen through Yu Zhao's plan and are only hiding at one side. It's good that they are in a stalemate like this. It will allow the sect master to refine the mechanism and then we can escape." Tang Taoist blocked a few of the incoming starlight and snorted, "How can there be such a good thing? All we need is a 3rd-stage cultivator who has cultivated his Dharmakaya. It won't take much effort for him to kill us here. Without the help of the upper sect, we are doomed." Yan Zhiliang agreed. Senior brother Tang is right. Looking at the situation outside, there is no one coming to rescue us. How can we escape? He looked at the bronze cauldron. Maybe, like what the sect leader said, we can only rely on this item later. The 2 Taoists from Yu Xiao school had been staring at the bottom. They waited until now but no one came to rescue them. They were puzzled. The skinny Daoren stroked his beard and said, "This is strange. Could it be that the devil sect doesn't care about this place?" The Taoist in green thought for a while and said, "If we don't occupy the altar at the Panjun Gorge, we will need to put in a lot of effort to conquer the dozens of formation boards downstream. The devil sect will definitely help us. I'm afraid they saw that the situation was not right. That's why they didn't move." The skinny Daoren said coldly, "They saw? That's fine. We will add more fuel to the fire." The Taoist in green raised his hand and said, "Don't be anxious. This is not the best time. Let's wait a little longer." The skinny Daoren nodded in agreement. In the blink of an eye, another 2 hours passed, and more than half of the altar had turned crimson red. It seemed like he only needed a little more to refine it. The skinny Daoren said resolutely, "We can't wait any longer. Junior Marshal brother, protect me for the time being. I'll go measure these juniors." With that, he shook his body and walked down. The people from Damo sect saw a Daoren with snow-like eyebrows coming towards them, but there was no high cloud above his head. They immediately knew that he was a cultivator who had cultivated Yuanyin Dharmakaya. They did not dare to let him get close to them, so they all took out their treasures. The call came. The slim Doran's movements were calm. He sneered and lightly pointed downwards, activating the heaven and earth lock technique. Everyone felt their bodies sink as if a mountain was pressing down on them, and they were instantly unable to move. At the same time, the skinny Daoren took out a golden rui and gently pushed it. Before the few Dharma treasures could display their might, they were swept aside by him through the air. The cultivators from Damo sect saw this. They wanted to summon it with their minds and attack again, but they realized that their senses were sluggish, and they could not control it as they wished. They knew that there was something strange about the Rui, so they could only retreat a little. They hovered in the air, looking for an opportunity. The skinny old Taoist didn't pay much attention to him. He was here to kill a few people and force the main character to show himself. However, at this moment, he glanced sideways. However, he saw that Fu Mian was still sitting in front of the forbidden tablet, as if he was not affected by the heaven and earth lock technique and was about to succeed. He frowned and guessed that Fu Mian had some kind of Dharma treasure to protect himself. He sneered and slapped his palm. Immediately, a large amount of sparks flew towards him. Yan Zhiliang raised his voice and shouted, "Protect the headmaster." As he shouted, a few Dharma treasures flew up. They knew each other very well, so they were very organized. When they attacked, some were in charge of attacking, and some were in charge of defending. They took care of both sides. However, the moment it came into contact with the star fire, one of the defensive treasures was instantly melted and fell from the sky, falling into the dust. The old Taoist once again summoned his scepter, and the treasures in the sky were knocked down one by one. Although the cultivators from Damo sect tried their best to resist, they were still not as strong as Shenlian. Their methods were broken in a short while. Yan Zhiliang saw that he could not protect Fu Mian any longer, so he became anxious. If Fu Mian was disturbed, then all his efforts in refining the forbidden tablet would be wasted. So, he did not hesitate anymore and took out a talisman. He steeled his heart and injected his mana into it. Almost at the same time, a bronze cauldron that was placed far away shook slightly. The red talisman that was sealed on it immediately fell off. The top of the cauldron made a few cracking sounds and a few cracks appeared on it. Green smoke came out from the cracks and rose into the sky. The skinny Daoran also saw the 3 cauldrons earlier, but he only thought that they were Devil's Dharma treasures. Seeing that they were opened, he was very cautious. He did not want to attack the enemy, but he wanted to protect himself first. He moved back a little and showed a cautious look. However, after the green smoke dissipated, he waited for a while and did not see any movement. He looked into the cauldron and saw that it was empty. He raised his white eyebrows and snorted, deliberately mystifying. When he was about to attack again, he suddenly felt a cold wind blow past him. He felt slightly dizzy and a protective talisman on his body burned without any fire. His expression changed and he said, "External devil?" He immediately reached out and touched the space between his eyebrows to seal his 7 apertures. Then he released a protective light and took out 2 Dharma treasures to protect himself. If it was an ordinary devil, his method of dealing with it could be said to be wrong, and it could be considered to be very cautious. However, a true devil was different. Its strength was that once it became invisible, the protective light and ordinary Dharma treasures would be useless. It could directly enter the cultivator's body. If the opponent's mind was stable and couldn't find an opportunity, it would hide. If there was a slight flaw, it would immediately take the opportunity to enter, occupy the body, or devour the soul. So, his method was completely useless. Although the skinny old Taoist had been cultivating for nearly 1,000 years, he had never seen a 1,000-year-old true devil with spiritual feet. He thought that he was well prepared and was about to attack again. However, just as he was thinking, he suddenly felt darkness in front of him. At first, he thought that it was some kind of Dharma treasure, but then he suddenly realized that his eyes were damaged. Because he didn't know what kind of technique he was hit with, he couldn't help but be shocked and angry, and also a little flustered. At this time, if he could stop the horse at the edge of the cliff and stabilize his mind, with his cultivation, he could at least last for an hour. During this time, if he could ask for help from the sex experts, he might be able to save his life. However, he didn't know what was going on and let go of his heart monkey. After a few breaths, he felt his limbs become heavy and his body gradually became tired. It was like he was in a dream, but he didn't want to wake up. At this time, Yan Zhiliang and the others felt their bodies become lighter. How could they not know that the true devil was working? How could they let go of such a great opportunity to kill the enemy? They immediately used their Dharma treasures and Dharma treasures to attack the opponent. However, at this moment, The skinny Daoran seemed to have sobered up a little. He shouted angrily, "Junior, how dare you?" He waved his sleeve, and a heavy pressure descended again. The 6 of them had just flown up when they were pressed down again. However, the skinny old Taoist acted hastily after all, and was a moment too late. The 6 treasures had already reached him, and the treasure light on his body was instantly smashed into pieces. He fell to the ground, and his Dharmakaya was on the verge of collapse. The Taoist in green saw this and exclaimed, "Senior brother." Just as he was in a hurry to help, he heard the voice of the skinny Daoran beside his ear, "Junior brother, don't come down." The voice was very urgent, as if there was a great danger in front. He hesitated for a moment and quickly stopped, looking down with bewilderment. The skinny Daoran was a person who cultivated the Yuanying Dharma body after all. At this moment, he had already noticed that his soul was slowly being invaded by something. For such a contest, perhaps the cultivators of the Devil's Doctrine had some defensive methods, but he had no power to resist at all. He barely stabilized his body and revealed a determined expression. He said in a deep voice, "Good devil, then come with me." As soon as he took out the spell, starlight burst out from his 7 orifices. Under the impact of this rainbow, the Dharma body was shattered in a short while. This was the method of burning one's body with star fire in Yuxiao school to sweep away all external devils. However, once this method was used, all the cultivation in one's body would be scattered. If one was unlucky, his soul would be destroyed. He obviously knew that he had no life, so he did this. At this moment, a blurry demonic shadow walked out of his body and watched coldly from the side until he was completely burned to ashes by the star fire. The shadow opened its mouth and inhaled, sucking in a wisp of indistinguishable spiritual smoke. When the Taoist in green saw this scene, he was extremely shocked. He didn't care about hiding at the side anymore. He reached out his hand and the star thunder fell. The devil shadow looked up at him and smiled inexplicably. Its body shook and suddenly disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. Boom! Boom! The lightning descended, but it smashed into empty air. The Taoist in green panicked and thought for a while. He didn't even know what his opponent was, so how could he deal with it? He didn't want to end up like his senior brother. Therefore, not only did he not land, but he also left this place and flew into the sky like a star. As he left, the devil shadow appeared again. He didn't seem to have any interest in the flying Yuxiao cultivators. Instead, he looked at Fu Mian and the others. In the eyes of the devil, the demonic cultivators with full souls were more attractive to him. This was also why there were not many cultivators who could control this devil in the past tens of thousands of years. They were afraid that before they could hurt the enemy, they would be killed first. Yen Zhiliang turned the talisman and used the method of controlling the devil taught by the Netherworld Spring sect. However, after several attempts, there was always a resistance. He quickly said, "Everyone, be careful and defend." Everyone here was from the demonic sect and knew how to deal with it. They all bit the tip of their tongues and spat out a mouthful of blood. In an instant, a layer of bloody light appeared on their bodies. Devils that consumed flesh and blood were normal devils. However, when it reached the level of the true devil, it only consumed souls and was stained with the blood of cultivators. Its own spirit was not pure and it couldn't become invisible for a while. Normally it resisted this. As expected, the true devil seemed to hate the bloody light. It also seemed to be afraid of the talisman in Yen Zhiliang's hand. It circled around a few times and didn't pounce on them. Instead, it turned around and landed in front of the other 2 bronze cauldrons. Yen Zhiliang's expression changed greatly, and he secretly cursed. This true devil had just swallowed the soul of a 3rd-stage cultivator. If it swallowed another 2 of its kind, it would very likely become a heavenly devil. At that time, except for the cultivators of the heavenly abode, no one would be able to control it. Floating astronomy. Chapter 986. The demon wanted to open the bronze cauldron, but as soon as he touched the red talisman on it, he was bounced away by a golden light, unable to get close to it. However, he didn't give up. He circled around the cauldron a few times and tried several times, But he couldn't open it, so he looked at Yan Zhiliang again. There was no emotion in his eyes, like a pool of stagnant water. When Yan Zhiliang's eyes met his, he thought back to what his master said about the heavenly demon, and he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. The so-called demon-subduing technique given by the sect couldn't deal with him at all. Just now, he could only hide for a while by relying on his own blood essence. If this demon really didn't care about anything, not only would he die here, even his soul would be swallowed. Just as he was thinking of a solution, the altar suddenly shook, and the forbidden tablet turned completely black. At the same time, the dozens of formation plates under the Panjun Gorge suddenly dimmed and fell into a dead silence. Fu Mian let out a long breath. At this moment, he finally succeeded in refining the forbidden tablet. Although he had used up too much of his magic power and was a little weak, his expression revealed a sense of excitement. "Everyone, it's done. We can leave this place now." The female cultivator said bitterly, "Sect Master, the sect's demon-subduing technique doesn't work. I'm afraid we can't leave." Fu Mian was concentrated on refining the restriction tablet, and he'd completely handed the matter of guarding the tablet to his fellow disciples. Even his heaven and earth seal technique was blocked by the magic treasure earlier, so he was completely unaware of the disturbance from the outside world. He couldn't help but be shocked when he heard these words, and he hurriedly sized up the surroundings. When he saw the devilish figure that floated by the side of the bronze cauldron, his eyelids twitched. When he looked outside, he saw light flashing around the altar, and he couldn't see how many people were outside, so he knew that they were trapped here. Although he wasn't good at planning, he could always come up with a countermeasure at every critical moment. Previously, he had led the people of his sect through dangerous situations several times. Now that he thought about it, he immediately had an idea and reminded, "Junior brother Yen, he wants the talisman in your hand. Quickly open the 2 bronze cauldrons and let the 2 demons out. Let him snatch it, we'll take this opportunity to retreat." However, Yan Zhiliang frowned and said, "There are still Yuxiao cultivators outside. This devil has devoured his own kind, so he might come after us again. At that time, there will be enemies in front and behind us. I'm afraid." Fu Mian interrupted him, "It doesn't matter. There is no need for the 7 of us to stay together. We can just split up and retreat. It all depends on one's luck." Tang Daoist agreed, "Headmaster is right. If we split up and retreat, there is still a chance of survival. Now that the dozens of formation boards downstream have been destroyed, the upper sect will definitely intensify their attacks. Yu Xiao is unable to split himself. Even if he breaks out now, it is impossible for him to stop all of us." Everyone carefully calculated. He felt that this was indeed the case. Yan Zhiliang saw that the demonic shadow was eager to give it a try, as if it wanted to pounce over. He knew that he couldn't hesitate any longer. He took a deep breath and muttered, "Life or death, it all depends on luck." He did not follow Fu Mian's instructions and directly opened the 2 cauldrons. Instead, he threw the talisman far away. It flew towards where the Yuxiao cultivators were. The moment the demonic shadow saw it, it immediately abandoned them and flew into the sky, chasing after the talisman. The Yuxiao disciples didn't know what it was. They thought it was some powerful talisman. They didn't dare to receive it themselves, so they used the talisman on the priests to attack them. This action obviously angered the true demon. Its body shook and suddenly split into dozens of groups, pouncing towards the person who attacked. These Yuxiao disciples saw a 3rd-stage cultivator killed by this demon. They didn't dare to go against it. They all dodged to the side, instantly causing chaos. Everyone saw this and their spirits were lifted. Fu Mian's eyes lit up. He shouted, "This is a good chance. Everyone, after we get out of this place, we will reach Mount Lingdang first. However, there is still some distance between us and Mount Lingdang. I will take my leave first." He leaped into the air and transformed into a ray of light. The remaining 6 people didn't hesitate at all. They all turned into light and flew in different directions. Yan Zhiliang's light was faster, and the direction he went was coincidentally the weakest part of Yu Xiao's defense, so he didn't meet much resistance and rushed out smoothly. He took a look back and saw that 4 light rays didn't manage to escape in time and were intercepted halfway. After a few breaths, there was no more movement. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. But now wasn't the time to relax, not to mention 1 or 2 Yuxiao cultivators chasing behind him. Even the true demon could catch up. Thus, he didn't look anymore. He raised his hand and a cloud of smoke rose up, throwing it towards a valley. The true demon circled 1 round and took back the talisman, ignoring the Yuxiao disciples who fled in all directions. It flew back to the altar and landed in front of the bronze cauldron. Because it absorbed the souls of many cultivators in 1 breath, its eyes actually had a hint of spirituality. It tossed the talisman in its hand, then blew a breath at it. After a short while, the vermilion talisman on the cauldron gently floated down. Now that it was free, the demon inside the cauldron naturally rushed out, but it didn't guard against its own kind spying on it. Before it could transform, it was swallowed by the watching true demon. After swallowing one of its own kind, smoke floated out of its body, as if it couldn't condense into a shape. After a long while, it returned to its original form, then walked to the last bronze cauldron and did the same thing, swallowing the demon inside as well. This time, its figure only became slightly blurry before it stabilized. The true demon didn't seem to have had enough. Its body moved like a bolt of lightning, heading straight for the spirit cave. At this moment, in another direction, Sima Quan was facing off against a Yuxiao elder named Xieshao. Both of them were apprehensive and wary of the other's divine abilities, so they didn't dare to act rashly. After a long time, Sima Quan suddenly felt a warmth in his sleeve. His heart thumped, and he looked deeply at the other party. With a wave of his sleeve, he turned into a light ray and retreated with the 10 people behind him. Xieshao's expression instantly relaxed, but his eyes revealed a hint of confusion. Behind him, a clansman came up and said, "Martial uncle, are we just going to let him go like that?" Xieshao said in a low voice, "Sima Quan's divine abilities aren't weak. It's best if he's willing to retreat. There's no need to provoke him anymore." Sima Quan stopped at a distance and took out a bamboo tablet from his sleeve. Seeing that it was already charred black, he knew that the true demon had been released. He thought to himself, "The plan is complete, now it's up to Yu Xiao to deal with it. If luck is on my side, we still have a chance of winning this time's fight for the spirit cave." After the green-robed Taoist was scared off by the true demon, he flew east. After half an hour, he saw a hexagonal spell altar rising from the ground. It was thousands of feet tall, almost like a mountain. Dozens of miles were filled with formation flags, and there were flying boats and cloud rafts everywhere. At a glance, there were more than 1,000 cultivators here. When he came near, the patrolling people recognized him and immediately let him in. They landed in front of a flight of steps on the spell altar and said to a child, "Child, please report that Zhou Lian has an important matter to discuss with Altar Master." Ever since Zhou Yong formed his cave, he rarely cared about the matters below him. Now, the person in charge was his fellow clansman, Zhou Ting. The child clasped his hands at him and went up. Not long after, he turned back and said, "Senior martial brother, he wants you to go up and meet him." Zhou Lian tidied his robes and stepped onto the high flight of steps. After 100 or so steps, he reached the top. His gaze turned and saw a cultivator half kneeling in front of the spell altar. He recognized him as an elder of the Wu clan. Zhou Ting's expression changed. He couldn't shirk responsibility for the death of a third-stage realm cultivator in the clan. He said in a deep voice, "I wonder who he met with?" Zhou Lian told him what happened in a low voice. Zhou Ting couldn't help but frown as he thought about the origin of that demon shadow. Ever since he entered the devil's cave to suppress the demon head, the 1,000-year-old true demon had not appeared in the world for more than 10,000 years. Although he had some guesses, he wasn't able to make a judgment in such a short amount of time. But if he were to report this to the sect, it would show that he was too incompetent. After thinking for a long time, he laughed and said, "Why am I thinking so much about it? There's a secret treasure on my altar. As long as I guard this place well, I don't need to be afraid of anything." Floating astronomy. Chapter 987. The altar beneath Zhou Ting's feet was called the Upright Sun Altar, and it had a total of 6 levels. Every single level was divided into 6 corners, and a magic treasure was placed on every corner to suppress it. There was a total of 36 magic treasures. A single magic treasure wasn't very formidable, but when they were combined together, they complemented each other's strengths, and when they were combined together, they complemented each other's strengths. Previously, because the Jade Sky sect wasn't sure where the bottom spirit point would be, they'd calculated the direction of the earth veins and found 14 possible locations. They'd expended an enormous amount of precious materials to build such altars on all of them. After the spirit cave appeared, there was only one altar to suppress the entrance of the cave, so he moved the carriage over. As long as this place was not lost, their side would be in an invincible position, so he was not worried. He comforted Zhou Lian with a few words, refused the latter's request, and ordered him to regulate his breathing. The Zhou disciples who cultivated Dharmakaya were all people who could become Grotto Heaven in the future and were highly valued by the clan. Before coming out, Zhou Yong had repeatedly reminded him to be careful. Just now, one person had unexpectedly died, and it was already a big headache for him. He did not know how to explain when he returned. If another person died, he would not be able to explain to the sect, so he would rather not move than send him out to take risks. Just now, Zhou Lian had wanted to redeem himself with meritorious service, but no matter what he said, it was not allowed, so he had no choice but to retreat. In the next 2 hours, there were continuous reports and messenger disciples landing on the altar. Senior Brother Zhou, the 2 altars of Guanhe and Yin River have been destroyed, and the disciples guarding the altars are all dead. Can we take them back? Reporting to Altar Master, the little fragrant mountain altar is surrounded, and Elder Xie Zhao's fate is unknown. Altar Master, please send people to rescue him. North of Enling Mountain is shrouded in a thick fog, and it is impossible to enter or exit. It seems to be the work of the Yuanshan sect. Gu Mo Mountain is lost. If one did not look at the big picture. Looking at the current situation, the formation plate that the Yuxiao school had painstakingly built for a long time seemed to be full of holes under the fierce attack of the devil sect, and was in danger of collapsing at any time. However, Zhou Ting only said one word, and did not do anything to respond. The elders below could not sit still, and one of them came up and said, "Spiritual Master Zhou, so many altars are being attacked. Why are you sitting there and not doing anything?" Zhou Ting said, "Elder Wu, don't worry. I know what I'm doing." Elder Wu still wanted to say something, but Zhou Ting raised his hand to stop him. Zhou Ting smiled and said, "Don't worry, Elder Wu. If anything goes wrong and the sect blames me, I will take full responsibility. It has nothing to do with you." Wu looked at him. Seeing the confident look on the other party's face, Zhang Xian nodded and sat back down. Zhou Ting's eyes swept across the crowd and saw the fear on the faces of the cultivators on the altar. He snorted coldly to himself, "They are all a bunch of short-sighted people. How can they see through my grand plan?" Last time, during the Battle of the Devil's Cave. In order to fool people, the Devil sect had created 5 devil caves. Because the Celestial sect of Wonders could not figure out whether it was real or fake, they could only wait for it to appear before making a move. The situation was very passive. But today it was different. There was only one devil's cave in the continent. The Celestial sect of Wonders knew where it was located, so they had long set up a spell altar and forbidden formation in the surroundings. By sealing off the underground tunnel, it could be said that the offensive and defensive positions had been reversed. Comparing the strength of the 2 sides, it was obvious that the Devil sect was at a disadvantage in this head-on battle. Looking at the general situation, before the battle for the Spirit Cave had even begun, they had already lost more than half. That was why Zhou Ting thought. Even if they won this battle, the sect would think that it was only right and proper. It would not be able to show off their skills. However, if they could use this opportunity to heavily injure the enemy or even kill a few of the Devil sect's talented cultivators, they would be able to make the sect look at them in a new light. Previously, when he said that there were arrangements behind the Panjun Gorge, it was not completely a lie. There were indeed many arrangements. His plan was to lure the Devil sect's cultivators into the hinterland and then block their path of retreat before surrounding and killing them. Even though many of the sect's cultivators had died, the outer spell altars were mostly guarded by the disciples of the Wu family and some of the smaller clans. There were not many casualties among the Zhou family's disciples. He estimated that in another hour, the devil sect would be here. When that time came, he could make his move. At this time, a few more flying letters came. He was slightly refreshed. When he took a look, he was a little surprised and thought to himself, this person actually slowed down his attack. Could it be that he saw through my plan? However, after thinking about it again, he shook his head. Even if the other party really saw through something, he was not afraid. Unless the devil sect completely gave up on fighting for the devil's cave, they had no choice but to come. As for whether it was a plan to advance slowly, it was even more impossible. One must know that the celestial sect of wonders had been accumulating for 10,000 years. The advantage they had was not something that the devil sect could compare to. They might be able to gain the upper hand in a short period of time, but the longer they dragged on, the more disadvantageous the situation would be for them. It was impossible for the person in the devil sect to not have thought of this. Then what was their true intention? Just as he was thinking, he suddenly heard a shout. He looked to the side and saw a blurry figure flashing past outside the spell altar. It seemed that the person saw that the defense here was tight and did not dare to come over, so he turned around and left. One of the elders did not wait for orders and chased after the person. Zhou Ting frowned. He saw that the person who left was a cultivator from his sect called Zhou Ying. Afraid that something might have happened to him, he pointed at the two people in front of him and said, "The two of you go out and support him. If you encounter any traces of the enemy, fight if you can. If you can't, quickly retreat. Don't get entangled with them." The two cultivators immediately took the order and chased after the person. In just the time it took to say a few words, Zhou Ying had already chased for more than 10 miles. The speed of the person who was escaping was not very fast. The more he chased, the closer he got. Not long after, the distance between them was reduced to less than 1,000 feet. Thus, he no longer stood on ceremony. He silently took out his magic treasure and attacked the person's back. Just as the magic treasure was about to hit, the person's figure suddenly flickered and disappeared without a trace. This time he hit empty air. Zhou Ying was startled and revealed a vigilant look. He withdrew the magic treasure and carefully circled around the surroundings, but he could not find the person. He cursed under his breath and was about to turn around and go back. But at this time, he suddenly felt a cold wind on his body, and he could not help but shiver. If it was any other time, he would definitely feel that something was wrong with his body. But at this time, he did not know why. He only felt a little dizzy and extremely tired. He did not want to think about anything and wanted nothing more than to fall asleep. Suddenly, two rays of light landed in front of him. They were the two cultivators who came under Zhou Ting's order. One of them looked at him and asked, "Senior Marshal Brother Zhou Ying, where did that person go?" Zhou Ying shook his head and said, "He disappeared after arriving here. I don't know where he went to hide." That person smiled and said, "He must have seen Senior Brother Zhou Ying's high cultivation and ran away in fear." The other person pondered and said, "The people of the devil sect are mostly people who hide their heads and show their tails. This place is so close to my altar, so it's not surprising that he did not dare to fight." The first person said, "Senior Brother is right. Senior Brother Zhou Ying, since we can't find this person, it's better for us to go back as soon as possible, lest the altar master worry." At this time, Zhou Ying felt a sense of exhaustion all over his body. He had long lost the desire to fight the devil sect cultivators, so he nodded and said, "I'll go back with you two junior brothers." The three of them turned back and returned to the altar. Just as they were about to go in, a hanging bell above them suddenly shook. Then there were three loud dang-dang-dang sounds. Zhou Ying's body sank as if he was pressed down by a large rock, and he could not move for a moment. Then, a streak of starlight spread out from the altar and pushed him out. Sensing the movement here, the elders on the platform immediately reacted. Someone said in shock, "It's the spiritual fixation bell. A devil has infiltrated this place." After Zhou Ying was forced away by the altar's restriction, his body suddenly shook and he fell to the ground. Then, a blurry figure flew out from his body and went outside. It suddenly split into two and pounced on the two elders who were close by. The two of them ignored the protective light on their bodies and disappeared into their bodies. At this moment, Zhou Ting was riding a ray of light and just happened to see this scene. He shouted, "Calm your mind." He quickly rushed in front of one of them and reached out his hand to pat the top of his head. Once the mana entered his body, it immediately turned into a torrential stream of light and rushed down. The true devil immediately felt it was difficult to endure. It couldn't stay in this person's body and was actually forced out. As if it was afraid of Zhou Ting, it turned around and disappeared into thin air. However, the other person was not so lucky. Before he could react, he saw a sword piercing down from above, turning into a golden light that went straight into the middle of his eyebrows. He immediately died, then his body turned into a raging golden flame and was instantly burned to ashes. After a breath or two, an indistinct figure appeared on the ashes and also disappeared with a flash. Seeing this, an elder of the Zhou clan on the side was shocked and angry at the same time. He shouted, "Elder Wu, what are you doing?" Elder Wu raised his hand and called back the sword. He said in a deep voice, "The spiritual bell is a warning. It's obvious that this person has been possessed by a devil. The devil sect has many tricks and it's difficult to guard against them. In order to not ruin the overall situation, I have to kill him." The elder said angrily, "Even so, he should be handled by senior brother Zhou. How can it be your turn to do it?" Zhou Ting waved his sleeve and said, "There's no need to say more. Just now, the situation is urgent. There's no time to think too much." Elder Wu also had no other choice. He's not at fault. At this moment, Zhou Lian came over and transmitted his voice to Zhou Ting, "Senior brother, this evil devil seems to be the devil that just now harmed senior brother Zhou Yan." Zhou Ting's expression turned serious. To be able to kill a third-degree cultivator in an instant, this devil was obviously powerful. Moreover, just now, under the burning star fire, it wasn't the least bit damaged. Could it really be the legendary true devil? Luckily, just now, there was a warning and it hadn't entered the inner room. Otherwise, who knew what kind of trouble it would cause? He was afraid of causing panic, so he didn't dare to voice his opinion. He looked left and right and said, "No one is allowed to leave without my permission." At this moment, one of the elders on the altar suddenly felt that something was amiss. He looked up and saw that outside the altar, there was a demonic figure standing in the sky. Upon closer inspection, it seemed to be exactly the same as him, and it was smiling at him. His eyes narrowed slightly and he shouted, "Evil demon!" Just as he was about to attack, he felt dizzy and fell backwards. At this moment, on the stage, there were more than 10 people who made eye contact with the demonic figure. They were all dazed and fell to the ground one by one. Floating astronomy. It drew the power of the stars into the body, and then combined it with hundreds of rare foreign objects to refine a mouthful of extreme yang star fire. Once released, any demonic creature would be wiped out in an instant. In the past, he had never failed against devil sect cultivators. He didn't expect this devil to be able to escape so easily after being hit by this technique. This was beyond his expectations. He circled around the altar a few times, but did not see the devil appear again. After thinking for a while, he suspected that the devil was hiding underground, so he went down to search again. This time, he returned to the altar with no results. On the altar, Zhou saw him return and anxiously asked, "Elder Wu, did you find the whereabouts of this devil?" Elder Wu shook his head. "This devil is very cunning. He has been hiding and has not come out. If Sage Shou can lend me the spirit-locking bell, I might be able to find him." Before Zhou Ting could speak, Zhou shook his head. No. He said, No. Without this, the altar will not be complete. If the devil sect attacks, how are we going to defend against them? Zhou Ting furrowed his eyebrows. The devil lord lingering outside was a huge hidden danger. At this moment, if he sent people out, it was very likely that they would be ambushed midway. All the plans that he had previously thought of would be useless. If this continued, he could only sit and watch as the devil sect wreaked havoc. He said hatefully, "This devil is too big of a threat. No matter what, we must find him." Elder Wu looked over and asked, "Sage Zhou, what do you want to do?" Zhou Ting said decisively, "I want to activate the 9 astral energy gathering formation under the altar and activate the heavenly lightning meteor fire to cleanse the filthy devils within 100 miles. Elder Wu pondered, "Although this is a good idea, isn't it making a big fuss over a minor issue for this devil? Why not wait for the devil sect cultivators to come and activate it together?" Zhou Ting shook his head. The devil was too hard to defend against and had many tricks up his sleeves. If he just sat there and did nothing, it would be very passive. Moreover, he thought that the reason why the devil sect cultivators stopped outside was probably because they were waiting for something to happen. Before the outcome of the battle was decided, they might not come over so easily. Thus, he said, "I only need to activate a corner of the formation plate. It shouldn't be too powerful, but I need someone to lure the devil out." Elder Wu thought for a while. Although he didn't agree, if they didn't find a way to solve this problem, it wouldn't be good for them to fight the devil sect freely. Thus, he said, "Sage Zhou is the person appointed by the mountain gate to take charge. Since you have already made your decision, we will just follow it." He said, "We can't delay any longer. We need to get rid of this devil as soon as possible." Zhou Lian responded and wrapped his cloak tightly around himself. With a leap, he flew up into the sky and circled around in all directions, attempting to lure the devil to reveal himself. Zhou Ting walked to the highest point of the altar and sat on the array position. Not long after, there was a sudden shout from the southwest, and there was also the sound of mana clashing. He turned his head to take a look and saw a demonic shadow circling around Zhou Ying. He knew that his chance had come. He raised his hand and pressed on the forbidden pivot, pouring all the mana in his body into it. Suddenly, there was a loud rumble. In the southwest corner, there was a stream of star fire. The bright light shone through the sky. Even Sima Quan, who was over 1,000 miles away, could see the commotion clearly. He laughed and said to the person beside him, "You Shao must be in a terrible fix right now. Send a letter to the fellow Taoists of the various sections. Tell them that chaos has arisen on the other side and they can't even take care of themselves. They can attack with full force later." The cultivator beside him bowed and left. At this moment, a disciple came up and said, "Master, from what I can see, that array looks like the 9 stars vitality gathering array?" Sima Quan nodded and said, "You're not wrong. It is indeed this formation. The Jade Cloud sect has really thought far ahead this time, and their planning is meticulous. They've actually even set up a formation of this level. If they had waited until we've attacked the altar and activated it, although it may not have been able to harm us, the demons we've brought along with us would probably have been swept clean on the spot." The disciple was shocked and said, "So that means that the true devil will very likely die under this array?" Sima Quan laughed and said, "If this devil hadn't swallowed 2 of its own kind, I'm afraid it wouldn't have been able to withstand this attack. As for now, you just have to wait and see." Outside of Xingyang profound altar, smoke and dust billowed. A streak of light flew out from within and landed on the platform. Zhou Ying appeared from within. He hurried to the top of the platform and said, "Just now when the array was activated, I only cared about dodging. I wonder what happened to that devil?" Zhou Ting looked over. Just now when the power of the array was activated, 100 miles of mountains and rivers were all within it. That true devil's speed wasn't fast, so it probably couldn't escape. This 9 stars vitality gathering array didn't care if you were a tangible or intangible object. As long as it was a Yin spirit or evil spirit, it could be wiped out in one fell swoop. He said, "It's done, but we can't be careless." Zhou Lian hurriedly said yes, but he knew that since Zhou Ting said so, the devil had most likely been wiped out, and the danger this time had been dealt with. His heart instantly calmed down, and he thought to himself, "Getting rid of this true devil can be considered as my contribution. After this battle, I believe the sect will not fail to reward me." As the 2 of them spoke, They didn't notice that the bodies of the elders who were being suppressed by the talismans all trembled. From their mouths, eyes, ears, and noses, thin wisps of black smoke that were almost non-existent were emitted. Then, they gathered in one place, and after 100 breaths' time, they transformed into a blurry human figure. Floating astronomy. Chapter 989. Zhenyang Xian altar was protected from both inside and outside. Just now, the true demon's body was being rebuilt. Alarms were raised on the altar. A silver bell on the southwest corner suddenly rang, and on the southeast corner, a wooden vermilion bird raised its head and chirped loudly. Zhou Ting was paying attention to the movements outside, but when he suddenly heard a sound coming from the altar, he couldn't help but be shocked. He immediately turned into a ray of light and flew towards the source of the sound. Once he arrived, he raised his head and saw a Taoist who looked similar to him standing there. His heart sank, knowing that the true demon hadn't been destroyed. Just as he was about to use his divine arts, he glanced over and saw that there were more than 10 of his fellow disciples who were unconscious. Out of hesitation, he could only wave his sleeves and unleash a mighty astral wind. Just now, the true demon had suffered a loss at his hands, so it seemed like it didn't want to meet him face to face. It used the same trick again, turning around and disappearing in the blink of an eye. Zhou Ting's face was gloomy. He walked to the place where the demon disappeared, looked around, and pointed at the altar. A flag on the altar waved, and a Taoist puppet's starfire fell down, covering the corner. Zhou Ying and Elder Wu also rushed over. The latter asked, "Enlightened Master, what happened?" Zhou Ting said solemnly, "The demon hasn't died." Elder Wu frowned. "That's strange. How did he sneak in?" As he spoke, he glanced at Zhou Ying. Just now, the altar's restriction hadn't been opened yet, and only he and Zhou Ying went in and out of the altar. He knew that his mind was strong enough to not be invaded by an external demon, so it was very likely that Zhou Ying made a mistake. Zhou Ying saw that he was doubting him. He quickly explained, "Just now, I'm wearing senior apprentice brother Zhou's treasured cloak. There's no reason for the demon to touch me." Zhou Ting waved his hand. "There's no need to be suspicious of each other. Junior apprentice brother Zhou Ying isn't possessed by the demon. The root of the problem is still here." Facing the puzzled looks of the two, he took out a small mirror and shone it at the sun. He then shone it at the unconscious cultivators below, and when the mirror shone on them, they all showed painful expressions. Zhou Ying saw that something was wrong. He asked anxiously, "Senior apprentice brother, what's wrong?" Zhou Ting said, "I was too careless. Just now, these fellow disciples were caught off guard and the invisible devil invaded their divine souls. As long as they are alive, the devil will not die. Just now, he had intended to kill all of these people so that he could get rid of the scourge. However, he was worried that quite a few of them were from the Zhou clan. If he could get rid of this demon after killing them, then it would be fine. However, he was afraid that if he couldn't solve this matter after killing them, then the Zhou clan would definitely punish him. This was a hesitation. With Wu and Zhou here, it would not be appropriate for them to make a move. Elder Wu had fought with many devil cultivators, but he had never seen such a fierce and strange devil. He frowned and asked, "Spiritual Master Zhou, where did this devil come from?" At this point, Zhou Ting couldn't hide it anymore. He sighed and said, "It's very likely that it's a true demon." Elder Wu was shocked and asked, "Really?" Zhou Ting was about to speak again. Suddenly, the sound of mountains being split open came from dozens of li away. He turned his head to look. Coincidentally, an altar was drowned by a deep river that could cover a mountain. Elder Wu's expression was solemn and said, "The demonic sect's attack is fast. It looks like it won't take long before they reach the altar." Zhou Ting snorted and said, "It's not that easy to take down Xingyang Xian altar. However, with this devil here, it's like a thorn in my back. Although I have sealed off the formation corner, it's not a long-term plan. I need to find a countermeasure." Elder Wu also understood this logic. Later, when they were fighting with the demonic sect, if the true demon attacked them from the back, it would not be good. He thought carefully and said, "It's hard to get rid of this devil, but there's a way we can try." Zhou Ting said, "What is it?" Wu Changdaoren said, "In today's world, when it comes to getting rid of demons, Huanzhen Temple is the best. Why don't spiritual masters send a capable person to this sect to invite a capable person here? Who knows, he might be able to subdue this devil." But Zhou Ting was silent. Elder Wu thought that he cared about his reputation and tried to persuade him. "Shinren, suppressing the devil's cave is not just a matter of us. The Huanzhen Temple is also a fellow Xianmen. Is there anything wrong with asking for help?" Zhou Ting sighed in his heart. How could he not know the logic behind this? It was just that before he left, Zhou Yong hinted to him that if it was not necessary, there was no need to ask for help from other sections. The reason for this was that the Devil's Cave was not far from his own sect. It was convenient for them to fight, and it was enough for them to have their own cultivators. Secondly, Zhang Yan had consecutively broken 2 Devil's Caves. Not long ago, he had recovered the power of the 12 heavens. Everyone knew of the power of Qinsong. Yuxiao School was also one of the 3 major sects of Xianmen, so they could not be any weaker. To be able to suppress the Devil's Cave with one's own strength was proof of one's ability. After thinking about it repeatedly, he felt that the real devil was a huge threat. If he did not get rid of it soon, not only would he not be able to defend the Devil's Cave, he would not even be able to defend it, let alone anything else. At this moment, there was no time for him to be overcautious. He said, "Huanzhen Temple has offered to help a few times but was rejected. I'm afraid it may not be what I want." Elder Wu heard that he was softening his tone and said, "Spiritual Master, you don't have to worry about this. The disciples of Huanzhen Temple take it as their responsibility to subdue the devil. When they heard that the real devil has appeared, they will not ignore it. If we can do it, it's okay to suffer some grievances." Zhou Ting nodded. "That's the only way." He looked at the 2 people in front of him. "Who is willing to go?" Zhou Ying volunteered. "Senior apprentice brother needs to guard the altar. To deal with the devil, Elder Wu has to be here. Why don't I go?" Zhou Ting said, "All right, I'll leave everything to you." He took out another talisman and said, "This is a spirit traveling talisman given by senior apprentice brother. When you use it, you need to burn incense and pray. Take it with you." Zhou Ying took it and kept it. He took a few steps back and bowed. "Senior apprentice brother, don't worry. I'll be back soon." He got down from the altar and flew outside. He was afraid that he would be intercepted by the cultivators of the devil's doctrine, so he did not dare to be ostentatious. He stayed close to the ground and sneaked out of the mountain realm. Only then did he light up the incense and put on the talisman. He turned into a stream of light and flew towards the northwest direction. Half a day later, the spiritual light of the talisman dispersed and he appeared. He looked up and saw that he was not far from the demon-subduing mountain where the mountain gate of Huanzhen Temple was. He gathered his mana and ran towards that direction with all his might. After a while, a ray of light came and stopped him. An old man with gray beard came out and shouted at him, "Who are you? The mountain gate of Huanzhen Temple is in front of us. Stop immediately." Zhou Ying looked at him and guessed that he was the patrolling elder who was guarding this place. He bowed and said, "I'm Yuxiao Zhou Ying. I've returned to your temple because I have an important matter to discuss with Zhenren Liang." The old man with gray beard's expression softened and said, "So it's a fellow cultivator from Yuxiao School. Ever since the battle at the Devil's Cave, Zhenren Liang has been cultivating in isolation. He doesn't care about anything anymore. I'm afraid that you won't be able to see him this time." Zhou Ying was startled and said, "Then I wonder who's in charge now?" The old man with gray beard said, "Now it's junior apprentice Sister Zhangzhen who's in charge of everything inside and outside." Zhou Ying bowed and said, "Can I ask fellow cultivator to pass a message for me?" The old man with gray beard said, "Unfortunately, the Devil's Cave has appeared. Junior apprentice Sister Zhang has been invited by your sect to deal with the cultivators from the Devil's sect. She hasn't returned yet." Zhou Ying was anxious. The devil was strange and unpredictable. The longer it dragged on, the worse it would be. He hoped that he could see Zhang Zhen as soon as possible. He asked, "Is there anyone else in your sect who can take charge?" The old man with gray beard shook his head and said, "Fellow cultivator, you don't have to worry. I'll pass a message to you later. Why don't you wait in the guest house and wait for junior apprentice Sister Zhang to come back? Zhou Ying had no choice but to ask for the other person's name. He let the other person arrange for him to go to the guest house and settle down. He wanted to meditate, but somehow, he felt restless and couldn't calm down. After waiting for more than 2 hours, he heard a commotion outside. He pushed the door open and looked around. He saw a carriage of curses coming from outside the mountain, like a cloud crossing the sky, streaking across the sky. Behind it were more than 10 nascent soul cultivators. His spirits lifted as he guessed that Zhang Jin had returned to the mountain. He sat back down and waited for someone to invite him over. He waited for a long time, but no one came to call him. He got impatient and went to the door. He found a Huanjin disciple and said, "Please tell Elder Pu that Zhou Ying is looking for him." Not long after, a conveyance light landed in front of the guest house. Zhou Ying hurried forward and said, "Fellow Taoist Pu, is Jinren Zhang from your sect back? Can you bring me down to see her?" Elder Pu smiled and said, "Unfortunately, before you came, there was an important guest who came to visit. Junior apprentice Sister Zhang is receiving the guest now, so please wait for a while. How about this? You can tell me first and I'll find a chance to tell junior apprentice Sister Zhang." Zhou Ying was dissatisfied. As a Yuxiao cultivator and someone who had cultivated Yuaning Dharmakaya, he had never been treated this badly. What kind of guest was so important? If it was any other time, he would have left in a huff. But now that he had a favor to ask, he had no choice. He thought that this matter could not be delayed any longer and told the whole story. Hearing this, Elder Pu was also shocked. "True demon? Why didn't you say so earlier?" As a cultivator of Huanjin Temple, he knew the power of the true devil. He said seriously, "This needs to be reported immediately, please follow me." As he said that, he grabbed Zhou Ying's arm and flew into the mountains. Not too far away, they saw a tall mountain towering above the clouds, surrounded by a continuous chain of temples, wandering amidst the sea of clouds. The scenery was extremely beautiful, but the two of them were not in the mood to admire it. After landing in front of the temple, Elder Pu went in first, and not long after, a disciple came out to invite Zhou Ying into the temple. He followed the disciple into the hall and saw a woman in white sitting in the hall. Beside her was a crane with a coiled neck. On the guest seat sat an elegant woman. The two of them seemed to be talking. He glanced at them but didn't recognize them. When they reached the steps of the hall, he bowed and said, "Yuxiao Zhou Ying greets Jinren Zhang." Zhang San looked down at him for a while, then said, "When Elder Pu said that fellow Taoist from Jade Heaven sect had encountered the true devil, I didn't believe it at first. But after seeing fellow Taoist Zhou, I can confirm that it's true." Zhou Ying was shocked. "What do you mean?" Zhang Jin said, "Taoist Zhou's heart was invaded by the demonic qi and was deeply poisoned. That was the true devil's method." Levitating astronomy. Chapter 990. When Zhou Ying heard this, she was also bewildered. She silently examined her body for a moment and found that there was nothing unusual about her. Although she was slightly anxious in her heart, she maintained a calm expression on her face and said, "Could it be that Taoist is joking? I don't think there's anything wrong with that." Zhang Jin said, "If Jinren Zhou feels that I am speaking empty words to intimidate you, there is no harm in taking several steps forward and looking at the stone mirror in front of my hall." Zhou Ying looked up and saw a jade mirror hanging at the top of the hall. After hesitating for a moment, he walked down and looked up, only to see himself in the mirror. He was as thin as a stick, and there were holes all over his body. At this moment, there were poisonous insects coming in and out of the holes. He couldn't help but take 2 steps back in shock. He subconsciously looked at himself, only to find that he was still fine. Suddenly, a burst of anger rose in his heart, and he asked, "Taoist Zhang, why did you play with me? Is this how you treat your guests?" Zhang Jin said calmly, "This stone mirror is called Paong. It can distinguish the real from the fake and restore the original. Just now, what it is seeing is the real appearance of your soul, Jinren Zhou. There is no falsehood at all." Zhou Ying was doubtful and said, "Jinren said that I have been affected by the demonic qi, Why can't I feel anything? Zhang Zhen said, true devil has 3 poisons: demonic aura, demonic thoughts, and devil fetus. Demonic aura harms the mind, demonic thoughts harms the soul, and devil fetus kills the truth. Although true devil has many transformations, it cannot escape these 3 poisons. Zhou Zhenren is suffering from demonic aura. Does Zhou Zhenren feel that recently your heart is restless and irritable, easily stirring up the 7 emotions, making it difficult for you to sit still? Plus or minus WWW. Zhou Ying's heart skipped a beat. At this moment, he had also calmed down. There was no reason for the Anata temple to fool him. He nodded slowly. Indeed. After meeting the demon, I kept feeling unsteady. Could it be caused by the demonic qi? Zhang Zhen said, the devil head is an extremely mean and filthy thing. The yang energy invades the body. Then, we will strip it of its spiritual vigor and scatter it in the world. In the hands of the devil sect, it is a precious medicine for cultivation, but to us cultivators of the Shenmen sect, it is extremely poisonous. The higher the cultivation of the devil, the stronger the poison gas. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhenren had cultivated the Yuanying Dharmakaya, most of the devil's qi would have been dispelled by his own qi of righteousness. I'm afraid he would have been possessed by the devil by now. Elder Pu chimed in from the side, once one's mind is in a mess, it'll be easy for the demon to take advantage of it. If one doesn't have the means to exorcise the demon, it'll be hard for one to escape. Fellow Taoist Zhou, you can escape in time. It was also luck. Zhou Ying's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. It turned out that his family had just escaped death this time. He cupped his hands towards his seat and sincerely asked, forgive me for being unreasonable just now. Taoist Zhang, may I know how to resolve this demonic qi? Zhang Zhen said, that is not difficult. Zhou Zhenren, please stand in front of the steps. Zhou Ying came to the Pill Emperor and saw that there was a jade pai xiu on it. It looked like a living creature, and Zhang Xian couldn't help but take a few more glances at it. However, in a moment of absent-mindedness, the creature suddenly leapt up, roared, and pounced towards him. He was shocked, and a sense of fear rose up within him, and he didn't have the slightest intention to resist. He wanted to turn around and escape, but he couldn't move at all. He watched as the pai xiu entered his body, but in an instant, it came out from his back. In its mouth was a ball of black ink without hands or feet. Just by looking at it, he felt annoyed and nauseous. The pai xiu swallowed the black shadow in a few mouthfuls, then returned to the Pill Emperor and squatted down, turning back into a jade statue. Zhou Ying came back to his senses, and felt like just now was a dream. When he looked at his body again, he felt relaxed, as if he had taken off a thick layer of clothing. Zhang Zhen said, Zhenren Zhou can look at yourself in front of the mirror again. Zhou Ying raised his head and looked again, but the reflection in the mirror didn't have any abnormalities, and looked normal. He couldn't help but exclaim in admiration and bowed, thank you Zhenren Zhang for your help. If not for you, I wouldn't even know that I've become a demon. Your sex exorcism method is indeed the best in the 9 continents. Zhang Zhen returned the bow and said, Zhenren Zhou, you don't have to thank me. It's my duty to exorcise the demon. Zhou Ying was now completely awake, and his mind was clear. Naturally, he knew the purpose of his visit, and said, please help your sect to subdue this true demon. My Yuxiao school will reward you handsomely after this. Zhang Zhen said seriously, even if Zhenren Zhou didn't say it, I still have to go when the true demon appears. However, if the devil's doctrine intentionally releases this demon, they will definitely set up obstacles along the way to prevent Huanzhen Temple from interfering. Although I'm not afraid, if I'm delayed halfway, I'm afraid I'll delay the important matter. Please help me out from your sect. Zhou Ying hesitated for a while. The altar was besieged by the devil's doctrine on the outside, and the true demon on the inside. He really didn't know how many people Zhou Ting could send. However, for the sake of his reputation, he couldn't say that he couldn't, so he said, I'll write a letter now. Zhang Zhen saw that his expression was strange, and thought for a while. She guessed that he was in a difficult situation, and turned to Wang Kaiwei, who was sitting on the guest seat, and said, Friend Wang, this is no longer a matter of your sect. Can you help out from your sect? Wang Kaiwei also knew that the true demon was ever-changing, and it was impossible to guard against it. It was a great enemy of the world, so she didn't hesitate and said, Jinren Qin has to defend against the Xueshua sect, and I'm afraid he doesn't have any extra people. However, I can write a letter to my master, and ask him to send people here. Zhang Jin said softly, it's really uneasy to alarm the temple master of Dujin. If there's a chance, I'll pay a visit to Jinren Zhang at Qinsong School, and personally thank you. Wang Kaiwei heard it, and couldn't help but feel happy. She arrived at Huanjin Temple a day ago, but coincidentally, the Devil's Cave appeared, so she couldn't see Zhang Zhen. Just now, when she came back, she was invited into the hall, so she only briefly explained her intention, and didn't have a deep conversation. However, Zhang Zhen's words had a hint of closeness, and she thought that it wouldn't be difficult to complete the task entrusted by her master. Zhou Ying heard the conversation between the two, and knew that Wang Kaiwei was Zhang Yan's disciple. He couldn't help but sigh. To be able to get Jinren Zhang's help was good, but if word got out, those who didn't know the inside story might think that Yu Xiao was asking for help from Qinsong School. However, at this moment, he didn't have time to think about this. To be able to kill the true demon was already a great fortune. He shook his head, took out a pen and paper, and wrote a letter. He then used his mana to send it out. Wang Kaiwei didn't fall behind, and also sent a letter to her master. It wasn't easy to subdue a true demon, and only a true treasure could suppress it. Zhang Zhen still needed to report to the heavenly abode of the Gate of Life to ask for help, but even so, there was only a 50% chance of success. Zhou Ying saw that the heavenly abode Jinren was alerted, and he knew that he owed a big favor. He was also worried, and he didn't know how the Jinren in the sect would react when they knew about this. At this moment, a few letters flew in from outside the hall. Elder Pu went forward to receive them, and personally placed them on the table in front of the hall. Zhang Zhen took them, and held them in her hands to read them quietly. Wang Kaiwei had been in charge of the heavenly lake of Zhaoyu for many years, and she was also experienced. Just from this one detail, she could tell that Zhang Zhen was very skillful, and she had trained her subordinates to be obedient. Otherwise, a famous elder in the sect like Elder Pu wouldn't be so respectful and careful. Just now, Wang Kaiwei had something on her mind, so she didn't pay attention to it. Now that she took a look, she saw that Zhang Zhen was very beautiful, and she had jade bones and ice skin. Among all the female cultivators she had seen, other than big martial sister Lu Yenyi, no one could compare to her. But when she took a closer look, she felt that her facial features were very similar to her master's, and even their expressions were somewhat similar. She couldn't help but think, her common name is also Zhang. Could it be that she's related to my master in some way? While she was lost in her thoughts, a little child with a ponytail suddenly came bouncing into the hall. He faced everyone in the hall, raised his little face, and said with a tone of an old man, "Who is it that wants to ask this old man to come forward?" His expression was really funny, but no one dared to laugh. Zhang Zhen stood up from the table, walked down the stairs, and bowed and said, "Jijing Jinren, it's Junior Zhang Zhen who is asking for you." Zhou Ying heard the way she addressed him, and knew that this little child was one of the twin demons subduing mirrors of Huanjin Temple, the Jijing Divine Mirror. It was said that this Zhen Bao had an eccentric temper, and did things as he pleased. Afraid of offending him, he lowered his head, and didn't dare to look at him. The little child took a few glances at Zhang Zhen, and said, "You're Pan Yunxiang's disciple? Your Shifu treats me respectfully, and it's boring to stay in the sect. Since there's a true devil playing around, I'll follow you to take a stroll." Finished speaking, his body turned into a stream of light and submerged into Zhang Zhen's sachet. Zhang Zhen saw that the Zhen Bao was already in her possession, so she didn't want to waste any more time. She gave a few instructions to the people below, and brought everyone out. They got on the carriage and flew into the sky, and together with everyone else, they headed towards the demon's cave. Not long after they left the mountain gate, they heard a sound from the horizon, like the rumbling of thunder, rolling towards them. They turned their heads to look and saw a blazing rainbow breaking through the clouds, flying straight towards the carriage. Everyone looked at the momentum and knew that the person who came must have borrowed the talisman of the Dongtian Jinren, or else he wouldn't be able to travel at such a godly speed. The light landed and stopped 1,000 feet away from them. Then, a young Taoist dressed in a plain Taoist robe walked out, and he looked like a tall crane. Wang Kaiwei was a little surprised when she saw him. She thought that her master would send eldest apprentice sister or second apprentice brother here, or at least a few elders from the Duzhen Hall. She didn't expect that this Jinren would come, and she bowed and said, "Greetings, Jinren Lu." Lu Junyang nodded at her and said, "Martial niece, you may rise." There were people who guessed his identity, and some avoided him, and some went up to greet him, but he responded to all of them indifferently. After greeting each other, everyone continued their journey. This time, because they didn't have the help of the talisman, they traveled for 2 days before they were 1,000 miles away from the demon's cave. When they arrived, the sky suddenly darkened. Everyone looked over and saw a cloud of dark purple smoke hanging in the sky, blocking the sun and the sky. It was dead silent, as if there was no life in the world, and they didn't know that someone from the Devil's sect was blocking their way. Lu Junyang looked over and said lightly, "You guys go first." Zhang Jin nodded and said, "I'll leave it to Jinren Lu." She turned the carriage around, and the people behind her went around it. The dark smoke in the sky slowly parted, and a middle-aged Taoist with a wide forehead and a hawk nose came out, and his face was deathly pale. He bowed and said, "I am Sima Quan. May I ask if you are Jinren Lu Junyang, who took the life of my sex elder Lu?" Lu Junyang didn't say anything, and only bowed back, which was a tacit agreement. Sima Quan chuckled, and there was a faint smile on his face, and he deliberately said in a sarcastic tone, "I didn't want to meet Jinren Lu here. It's a rare opportunity, and I'll have to experience it. I only hope that Jinren Lu doesn't live up to his name like your master." Chapter 991. As soon as Sima Quan finished speaking, LV Junyang did not reply. He only looked over and said coldly, "Do it." Sima Quan saw that his expression was calm and knew that he could not hurt him with words, so he did not say any more useless words. With a shake of his body, there was clearly nothing in the sky, but there were howling sounds. In the dark night, it was as if there were countless ghosts and demons hiding. He had received secret teachings from his sect, so the demons that he sent out were not ordinary. They were all formless and shadowless, making it impossible to see or hear them with one's eyes and ears. One could only rely on their own senses to distinguish them. The demons were ever-changing, and some of their peculiarities could only be known by those who had refined them. Outsiders would not be able to understand their profundities without fighting them. However, in the face of such a vile creature, as long as one wasn't careful or misjudged, their life would be in danger. As such, in such a situation, some experienced cultivators would usually choose to retreat and use movement techniques to increase the distance between them. After figuring out the devil's origins, they would then try to counterattack. Usually, when Sima Quan attacked, the cultivators who fought him would choose to retreat out of caution. However, by retreating, he had handed the initiative to Sima Quan. He had originally thought that LV Junyang would also retreat temporarily, and then he would have a series of follow-up attacks. Unexpectedly, he didn't even take half a step back. Instead, he opened his mouth and let out a shout. Suddenly, the sound of jade breaking and metal striking resounded between heaven and earth. Before the devils could even get close, they were shaken by this sound and burst like bubbles. When Sima Quan heard this sound, his spirit trembled and his heart was shaken. He hurriedly made a hand sign and a white light appeared on his Taoist robe, shielding him within and isolating him from the sound. Only then did he have the time to take a look. He saw that the protective light barrier seemed to be pressed by a huge external force. It was trembling like water. He thought, 9 mountains clear sound? Looks like this LV Junyang has learned the treasure gold cloud inscription. Among the 12 divine powers of Qinsong school, there were a few that could only be practiced by the corresponding cultivation method. Although there were not many variations, the deeper one's cultivation was, the greater the power of the divine power. LV Junyang had practiced the Yuaning Dharmakaya for a long time. Once this supernatural power was unleashed, the sound stopped the clouds and shook the mountains and rivers. The sound lingered for a long time. Not only did it sweep away the attacking demons, but it also destroyed the dirty tricks that the disciples of the devil's doctrine used earlier. When he used his divine ability, he did not stop and continued to fly forward. When he saw that the distance between them was slightly closer, he raised his hand again and dozens of golden rays of sharp chi tore through the atmosphere and slashed down from the sky. Sima Quan, however, did not dodge. With a thought, hundreds of demons appeared in front of him, advancing wave after wave, taking the initiative to tangle with the golden light. In just a short while, they were all wiped out, but the golden light also dissipated after exhausting its power. Seeing that LV Junyang was continuously teleporting in the air, it would take at most a few breaths of time for LV Junyang to arrive in front of him. He hurriedly pointed his finger in front of him and spat out a mouthful of turbid air onto the tip of his finger. After traveling for 7 or 8 feet, the turbid air turned into a cloud of murky black smoke. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire sky. Looking from afar, everything within a radius of several dozen feet was wrapped in a hazy fog. LV Junyang's shoulders shook slightly and a layer of bright golden light appeared on his plain robe. He fearlessly charged into the fog. The black fog seemed to have a mind of its own. Once it came into contact with the brilliance, it all gave way, allowing him to kill his way through in an instant. However, after traveling for a few more miles, he suddenly found himself in the middle of a huge demon. This demon was incomparably huge. It opened its mouth and cracked its teeth, as if it could even swallow a mountain in one gulp. Seeing this scene, he was not the slightest bit moved. His body was wrapped in golden light and he charged forward. With a rumble, this half-illusory, half-demon boundary was smashed apart. Sima Quan's expression froze. He did not expect that his opponent, who appeared to be aloof and indifferent, would be like his master, Yen Changxing. His spirit was like a dragon, aggressive and overbearing. He actually made Sima Quan feel that he could not defeat him. Ever since Lu Rongyang was killed, he was afraid that he would also meet this opponent. He had specially investigated the past of this master and disciple, LV Junyang. He discovered that LV Junyang had fought countless people in his life. Other than his final battle with Zhang Yan, he did not know the details. As long as he had the upper hand, he had never given his opponent a chance to turn the tables. At this moment, seeing that his opponent was getting closer and closer, he suddenly felt that it was not good to let him go. He had to stop his momentum. Since he could not suppress him with his supernatural power, he would use his magical weapon to stop him. He raised his palm and a golden lamp appeared in the middle of his palm. After chanting a spell for a moment, he raised his hand and rubbed it against the air. When it was in the sky, the wick of the lamp crackled and a jade-green flame ignited. Then, it fell down in clusters, covering tens of miles of mountains and rivers. LV Junyang flicked his sleeve and a layer of faint light appeared on his plain robe. The jade-green flame on his body was extinguished. Without even looking, he directly charged out of the circle of fire. At this moment, there was about 100 feet between the two. For a cultivator who had cultivated a Dharmakaya, it was extremely close. However, a red light flashed in his eyes and he glanced at Sima Quan. Before Sima Quan could come over, a layer of fire suddenly appeared on his body. He hurriedly used his mana to suppress it. However, this fire could not be extinguished. Not long after, the outer layer of the treasure light was corroded and it quickly invaded the inside. Seeing this, his heart sank and he said in shock, "Howie 3 Yang Qi?" Among the 12 supernatural powers of Qinsong school, this supernatural power was the most difficult to deal with. There was almost nothing it could not burn. If it could not be extinguished, even magical weapons would not be able to withstand it. He knew that he could not avoid it, so he said loudly in the fire, "Sage LV, you have a slight advantage in this round. You and I will meet again later." After saying that, he actually withdrew his mana and allowed the fire to attack his body. In just a moment, he was completely engulfed by the raging flames. With a gust of mountain wind, traces of black smoke dispersed. Where he originally stood, there was only a pile of ashes. LV Junyang glanced at it and then looked around. He raised his hand and 9 spiritual shuttles flew up behind him. They flew around him, sometimes slowly and sometimes slowly, as if they were looking for something. His master, Yen Changsheng, had immersed himself in the sensory nerve for 3,000 years and had a deep understanding of this method. He even created the qi nurturing technique of a small world. Although his own disciple did not practice this method, he still passed down a set of secret methods that allowed him to use the flying shuttles to test out the spiritual opportunities when fighting an enemy. After a while, 2 of the spiritual shuttles suddenly stopped and suddenly turned around, shooting in a direction like an arrow. He flicked his sleeve and stepped on a cloud of light, following them. At the same time, more than 10 miles away, on top of a hill, a devil suddenly floated out. It swayed on the spot and changed into Sima Quan's appearance. The method he practiced was one of the underworld Spring Sect's 6 classics, reality-spirit connection. When he first practiced this method, there was nothing special about it. Even ordinary disciples could not compare to it. It was only after he reached the 3rd stage of yuanying that he just now showed its power. If a cultivator practiced this method, in times of danger, he only needed to use the incantation and his dharma body could be moved to the devil that was arranged in advance. As long as the devil was not eliminated, it could not be killed. The sect's supernatural power, 3-in undying body, was refined from this method. In a fight between strong people, victory or defeat was usually determined by a thin line. With this method, even if he lost the first time, as long as he peeked at his opponent's moves, he would be able to be on guard the next time. With this method, if his opponent wanted to kill him, he did not know how many times he would have to use it, but he only needed to find the right opportunity to take his opponent's life. Ever since he mastered this method, he had never failed in a fight against an enemy. The only flaw of this method was that it could only move back and forth within a certain domain. If he flew too far away, the devil that was arranged in advance would not be able to respond. If there was even the slightest mistake, he would really die. Just now, he was humiliating Yen Changsheng with words. This was his intention. As his disciple, LV Junyang naturally could not leave before he completely killed him. He could only be tied down here. LV Junyang can use Houi 3 Yang Qi, so he must be the same as Huoxian. He also practiced Crimson Sky Lucky Jade Book. But why do I feel that just now's fire is slightly different from what was described in the book? Could it be, while he was deep in thought, several cold stars suddenly burst forth in front of him, shooting straight in his direction? He was instantly shocked. With a mental command, a pure gold devil appeared from his body and blocked the stars with a few clangs. Sima Quan took a closer look and saw that it was 2 plain white flying shuttles. How could he not know that LV Junyang had come again? He hurriedly called out another 100 devils to defend and deal with the shuttles. These devils were refined using the outer heavenly star sand. They were not afraid of the slashes of divine weapons and magic swords, and they flew extremely fast. They also had some spiritual intelligence and were best used to defend fast attacking weapons like the flying shuttles. Although the 2 flying shuttles did not hurt him, they did not leave. They continued to circle outside. After a dozen breaths, a youth in plain Taoist robes arrived on a cloud. His gaze shifted downwards, and 100 flying shuttles appeared around him. They pointed their tips at him, and then, in groups of 3 to 5, or in groups of 7 to 8, they shot down continuously. The sky was filled with the sound of the shuttles tearing through the air. Sima Quan controlled these devils. At first, he could still fight back, but after fighting for a while, he felt that something was wrong. Among the flying shuttles, there were a few extremely powerful ones. Every time they landed, they would hit the weakest points of the devils. In a short while, more than half of them were killed. If this went on, he could foresee what the outcome would be. Chapter 992. When Sima Quan and Lu Junyang were fighting, Zhang Jin had already arrived outside of Jing Yang's mysterious altar. Her group of people's magic power was strong, and with the addition of Jade Firmament disciples who came out to receive them, no one came to obstruct them for a while. Zhou Ying excused himself and went down to report. Not long after, the array outside the altar opened, and he came out again, eagerly inviting Zhang Zhen and the others to enter. When they entered the inner room, Elder Wu stood on the stairs and cupped his hands. Jinren Zhou is on the altar to prevent the demon from escaping, so he can't come out to welcome you. I hope you don't mind. Zhang Zhen said seriously, the true demon's transformation is strange. It's reasonable for Jinren Zhou to be so cautious. Elder Wu, please lead us there. It's better to get rid of this demon as soon as possible. Elder Wu also knew that this was the most important thing, so he did not bother with pleasantries and said, please follow me. Zhang Zhen instructed the others to stay behind, and only brought Elder Pu and 2 female disciples to follow her up to the altar. Going up the stairs, it didn't take long for him to reach the top of the altar. Looking up, he saw Zhou Ting sitting there. His entire body was surging with mana, and his spiritual qi was like fire. There was a banner hanging on top of him, and there were many light clouds hanging down like silk ribbons. It happened to cover a corner of the altar. Elder Wu said, Jinren Zhou, Taoist friends from Huanjin Temple have arrived. Zhou Ting's eyes turned and said, I can't leave, please help me thank Taoist friends from Huanjin Temple. Zhang Zhen said, Jinren Zhou is too polite. Elder Pu laughed. That's right, Jinren Zhou has a heavy responsibility, don't get distracted. At this moment, Zhang Zhen saw the Jade Firmament cultivators lying on the ground. She slowly walked to their side and examined them carefully. Zhou Ying came up and said, Jinren Zhang, do you think they are poisoned by the demon? Zhang Zhen stared at them for a moment, and said, these Taoist friends are poisoned by the demon. This poison intertwines with the soul, like a piece of white paper dyed with ink. Right now, it's already completely filthy. If I want to save it, I'll have to put in some effort. Zhou Ying bowed down and said, Reverend, please save my fellow disciples. Zhang Zhen nodded. Elder Pu, bring me a box of golden incense. Elder Pu hurriedly took out a long jade box from his sleeve. It looked simple and unadorned, but it was very unique. When he opened it, he saw 10 small incense sticks, each about 3 inches long and as thick as a bamboo stick, neatly placed inside. He reached out his hand and took it out, passing it to Zhang Zhen. The latter ordered people to help the people lying on the ground up. Then he held the incense in his hand and waved it above everyone's heads. Not long after, a small person could be seen dancing in the faint smoke. However, it was thin and indistinct, as if it would scatter with a breeze. As the small incense burned, a layer of black color gradually covered the little person's body, and it became thicker and thicker. At this moment, Zhang Zhen pointed her finger. The little person let out a heart-wrenching scream and disappeared immediately. There was no joy on Zhang Zhen's face. Instead, she frowned slightly. Elder Pu asked softly, Junior Martial Sister? Is there anything wrong? Zhang Zhen said, this true demon is not ordinary. It took 1 incense stick's time to purify this demonic thought. It's obvious that his attainment is very high. Even if Reverend Zhou can fight against him for a while, he might not be able to subdue him. This demon has not appeared for a long time. I'm afraid he's plotting something. Elder Pu agreed with her. Just now is the time to get rid of the demonic thought. He had secretly taken precautions to prevent the demon from coming out to cause trouble. One must know that once the people below were healed, the true demon would have no place to reside. Yet, the demon was able to hold himself back and did not even cause any disturbances. He did not believe that there was nothing strange about this. He thought for a while and said, Junior Martial Sister, why don't you set up a seal here first? Let's force the demon out first. Zhang Zhen shook her head and said, this is Yu Xiao's territory after all, it's inconvenient to do anything here. To force the demon out, they needed to make a detailed arrangement. But this was not Huanjin Temple's territory. Jingyang Shentan was a secret of the Zhou clan. It was inconvenient to do anything here. To prevent the sect's secrets from being leaked, Zhou Ting could not let them do this. Elder Pu pondered and said, then we can only settle for the next best thing. I'll go and discuss with Reverend Zhou to see if we can use talismans to suppress it. Although our sect upholds the path of eliminating demons, it was Yuxiao School that invited me here. They should give in. Otherwise, my hands and feet will be tied and I can't do anything. They might think that Huanzhen Temple is not capable enough. Zhang Zhen hummed and said, then I'll have to trouble Elder Pu. Elder Pu cupped his hands and went to discuss with Zhou Ting. At this moment, 30 miles away from the altar, a flying shuttle flew in from the sky. Sima Quan could not dodge in time and was pinned to the stone wall with a bang. He struggled for a while, but seeing that he could not escape, he did not waste his energy. He looked up at LV Junyang, who was standing in the sky, and laughed. His head drooped down and he suddenly turned into a puff of ashes and black smoke, falling down with a rustle. LV Junyang's eyes revealed a sense of calmness. This time, he did not pursue his opponent's whereabouts. After a few rounds of fighting, he could already confirm that his opponent cultivated the Mingquan sect's reality spirit connection. Although this was one of the Mingquan sect's top skills and was famous, demonic skills were strange and often looked right but were actually wrong. It was obviously a different skill, but it was hard for outsiders to distinguish. After killing him several times, he dared to make such a judgment just now. He knew very well that if he wanted to kill a cultivator who cultivated this cultivation method, the first thing he had to do was to get rid of the many demons that were set up here. But this was not easy. Not to mention the fact that the demons themselves had intelligence and could fly, there were many of them. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to eliminate all of them in one go. But he knew that as long as the cultivator had enough Fa, if he did not care about the price, it was not impossible. He looked around. Just now, he had gone back and forth a few times, but he always circled around within a radius of 30 to 40 miles. Thus, he could determine that the demons that were placed should be within this region. As for any further, with his Fa, he would not be able to cover them. Even if there were any traps, there was no need for him to care. He sat cross-legged on the cloud and slowly breathed out a few times. Then, he took in a deep breath and suddenly raised his head, letting out a long cry. The cry of a crane pierced through the air, rising higher and higher until it pierced through the sky. Then, it leisurely spread out in all directions, stirring up the clouds, raging rivers, and rising mountains in response. This cry was more than 10 times more powerful than before. However, it only circled back and forth within a radius of 30 miles, and only stopped after a full quarter of an hour. As soon as the sound stopped, the heaven and earth instantly became silent. On a mountaintop 10 miles away, Sima Quan laid down on a huge rock. He coughed a few times and staggered to stand up. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing, recovering some yuan qi. He sensed with his heart for a moment, and his eyelids twitched. Just now, LV Juanyang's long cry had shattered more than 90% of the demons that he had placed. The remaining ones were also on the verge of shattering. Even if he teleported over, he would not be able to save his life. However, he did not panic. The might of that divine power just now was so great that it almost shattered his Dharma body. To be able to unleash it to such an extent, even if the other party did not exhaust all of his mana, he should be at his weakest right now. Although he did not know why the opponent was so unwise, he could not miss such an opportunity. Thus, he tapped his feet and flew away. The distance of more than 10 miles was covered in a flash. From afar, LV Junyang could be seen sitting cross-legged on the mountain peak. A few miles away, he appeared again, and after 3 times, he was already very close to the Zhenyang mysterious altar. Although the demons that were set up this time were mostly broken, there was still one demon that could move, and that was the 1,000-year true devil. When the reality spirit art was practiced to a high level, one could seize the body of the sky devil. However, since the establishment of the Nether Spring sect, there were very few people who succeeded. Even if they succeeded, most of them would lose their nature, and they would kill wantonly, unable to distinguish between friend and foe. Therefore, this was a very risky thing to do. Even if he succeeded, he would not be the original him, and the masters of the sect would also have to suppress him. However, at this critical moment of life and death, rather than being killed by his opponent, he might as well give it a try. Floating astronomy. Chapter 993. On the altar, Zhou Ting frowned when he heard that Elder Pu needed to use talismans to expel the demon. Must we do this? Elder Pu said, let's put it this way, Jinren Zhou. That devil's cultivation is very high. Even if Zhang Shimi's supernatural powers and Taoist arts are of the highest level, she will still have to be careful when saving people. But if the preparations are made in advance, there will be no need to be afraid of sneak attacks, and you can put your heart and soul into it. In less than an hour, you will be able to expel the devil's poison from your disciples. Zhou Ting thought for a while and said slowly, if it is only in this corner, there will be no problem. But we cannot go any further. It is not that I am heartless, but this altar is placed above the entrance of the demon's cave. It is crucial to the success of this battle. One mistake and the whole situation will be affected. So we have to be careful. Elder Pu nodded. Jinren Zhou, don't worry. We will be careful and not make things difficult for your sect. Although he said so, he felt slightly dissatisfied in his heart, thinking, it was the Jade Sky sect that invited me here. Now it seems like I'm the one begging you. If I don't do anything, what can you do? But it was just a thought and he did not dare to leave. The founder of Aneta Temple had set a rule that if a disciple encountered a demon outside, or if a fellow Taoist asked for help, and if they have the ability, then they must help. He returned to Zhang Jin's side and told her what Zhou Ting said. He asked Zhou Ying and Elder Wu to leave and brought 2 female disciples to set up the prohibition spell. Zhang Jin stopped what she was doing and stood still at the side, waiting with rapt attention. Once the prohibition spell was set up, the demon would be greatly restrained. If they wanted to make a move, this was the only time. About half an hour later, when the prohibition spell was about to be set up, a shadow suddenly appeared from one of the unconscious cultivators. There was an inexplicable smile on his face as he stared at Zhang Jin. His body turned as if he wanted to transform into her. But halfway through, green smoke came out of his body. He let out a scream. Elder Pu, who was watching from the outside, mocked in his heart, reckless fool. All the direct disciples of the Anjin Temple. Every day, he had to take the demon-warding pill and seal his mind to prevent any external demons from invading him. As for Zhang Jin, a direct disciple of Master Dongtian, she could cultivate in front of the treasure of the sect, the Aneta mirror, every day. As time went by, her appearance and the mirror light matched, reflecting her body, and all the illusions of her appearance couldn't be taken away. Using the devil head was like swallowing poison. It was the same as seeking death. After suffering such a loss, the devilish lord seemed to have become extremely enraged. His body suddenly dispersed, transforming into several tens of devilish projections that attacked everyone present. Elder Pu sneered and allowed the demon to enter his body. Not long after, a thunderous sound could be heard from within his body. With a snort, wisps of black smoke floated out of his ears. It was obvious that he had killed all the evil spirits. The 2 female disciples from the Huanjin Temple were not in a hurry. They made a gesture with their hands, opened their mouths and let out a sound of ja. With a boom, the devilish figure that was charging towards them turned into smoke and flew away. Zhang Jin only watched quietly and did not move. Before the devilish figures could reach her, they collided with a layer of light. They couldn't help but shiver as if they had met their natural enemy. They retreated in a panic, but before they could get far, their bodies melted like wax. After a few breaths, they disappeared. She raised her hand and caught a wisp of chi dynamic. She sensed it and said, Elder Pu, I think you saw it too. Elder Pu Daoren, yes, this devil isn't the real devil. It was born from the devil's fetus, but its cultivation is far from the real one. Among the 3 poisons of the real devil, the poison from the devil's fetus was the hardest to get rid of. This poison was nourished by human desires and could give birth to a devil. The higher the cultivation of the person residing in it, the stronger the devil. Zhang Jin said, Jinren Zhou is not a disciple of Huanjin Temple, so he can't tell the difference. What he saw just now might be this devil. The real devil might not be here. Elder Pu thought for a while and said, Junior Apprentice Sister's words make sense. Unfortunately, we are in Yu Xiao's territory and the talismans on this altar reject items from other sections. We can't just do whatever we want. If not, we could use the glazed heart lamp to suppress it and it would have nowhere to hide. Zhang Zhen shook her head and said, Now is not the time to dwell on this. We need to find out where the real devil went. Elder Pu's expression turned serious. After a while, he thought of a possibility. Could it be that the devil had entered the devil's cave? As he thought about this, he couldn't help but say, I wonder how this altar is. Is it really like what Jinren Zhou said, that it can suppress the door of the devil's cave? Zhang Zhen said, After all, we are outsiders. It is not appropriate for us to investigate. However, we need to give a reminder and let our friends from Yu Xiao School check it out. Elder Pu sneered and said, I am just afraid that our friends from Yu Xiao School will think that we are making a mountain out of a molehill and will not take it to heart. Zhang Zhen said, We just need to mind our own business. There is no need to care about others. Elder Pu nodded in agreement and sent 2 disciples to invite Elder Wu and Zhou Ying back. He then told the 2 of them about his worries. When the 2 of them heard that the true demon might not be trapped here, they were shocked. Elder Wu asked, Elder Pu, are you sure? Elder Pu Daoren said, The real devil is not like those devils that you have seen in the past. To force it to show itself, we have to use many methods. However, Jinren Zhou Ying did not allow it. What can we do? To verify our guess, why don't we check if there are any loopholes on the altar? It will be more convenient. Elder Wu was silent for a moment and said, I need to report to Jinren Zhou immediately. However, I will have to rely on you 2 to take care of these people. Zhang San said, The lives of these fellow Taoists can be preserved. Elder Wu cupped his fists at the 2 of them and went up to Court Zhou, hurriedly reporting the matter. Zhou Ting was deep in thought after hearing it. He sat on the pivot, and all the movements of Zhengyang profound altar were within his eyes and ears. Wherever there was an unforeseen event, he would immediately know. Therefore, he was sure that the demon had not escaped. However, there were still many Yu Xiao disciples here. The cultivators of the demonic sect were surrounding the altar. He could not let the devil run around in the altar. He had to think of a way to solve this once and for all. He raised his head and said, Elder Wu, invite the 2 friends from Huanjin Temple. Elder Wu responded and left. After a while, Zhang Zhen and Elder Pu arrived at the top of the altar. Zhou Ting invited them to sit down and asked, Shinren Zhang, the reason why the devil is entangled here is to enter the demonic cave? Zhang Zhen nodded. The devil was born from the demonic cave. Naturally, it wants to return to this place. Just like how fish like water and birds like trees, it is its nature. Zhou Ting nodded and asked again, If the devil is in front of you, do you 2 have the confidence to kill it? Elder Pu Daoren said, Jinren Zhou, don't worry. When we came out, we brought our sect's treasure, the divine mirror. As long as the devil is in front of us, it will not be hard to kill it. Zhou Ting frowned. There were many instruments on the altar. If they were released, there would be conflicts. But if they were kept, they would not be able to defend against the enemy. It was a dilemma. He thought for a while and said, What if we do not use this treasure? Elder Pu was startled. He did not dare to make the decision. He looked at Zhang Zhen. The latter thought for a while and said, I only have 60% confidence. Zhou Ting's eyes were sharp and he seemed to have made a decision. He said in a deep voice, Then it is worth a try. Wu Zhang Daoren asked, Zhenren, what do you want to do? Zhou Ting looked at Zhang Zhen and Elder Pu and said slowly, I want to open a door that leads to the demonic cave. This way, the devil will be lured out. My friends from Huanjin Temple, please stay in the dark. Once it appears, please kill it. Elder Wu was slightly taken aback. This plan could be said to cut through the Gordian knot. If it was successful, it could indeed solve the problem in one fell swoop. However, if the demon was not eliminated and was allowed to enter the demon's lair, the outcome of the battle between the Xian demons would be unpredictable. Elder Pu felt some admiration for Zhou Ting in his heart. The consequences of this action were not small. If he was in Zhou Ting's position, even if he thought of this plan, he might not have the courage to do so. Zhang Zhen thought for a while and said seriously, "I will try my best." Zhou Ting stopped suppressing the altar and stood up. He said, "All right, this matter is urgent and cannot be delayed any longer. Please follow me." He raised his hand and slapped on the forbidden pivot stone steel. Everyone felt that the scenery in front of them changed and they entered a tunnel. The walls were filled with swirling sand and stones. Zhou Ting said, "This is called the Eternal Sand Flying Star Path. There are hundreds of types of stellar sand that can wear down flying swords and treasures. Even if the demonic disciples break the altar, they will not be able to pass this place easily." Elder Pu snorted and thought, Yu Zhao's arrangement is indeed tight. It is a pity that the devil can shapeshift, so it is useless against him. Zhou Ting waved his sleeve again and the sand on the right retreated, opening up a door. He was the first to enter, and the others followed. This place was an empty stone mansion. Outside the door, one could not see inside, but looking inside the door, one could see everything clearly. Zhou Ting said, "Zhenren Zhang, what do you think of this place? Can it be used to ambush the devil?" Zhang Zhen looked around and said, "I still need to make some preparations." Zhou Ting said, "As long as it is not an offensive mystic instrument, it will be fine. If it causes the sand to roll back, even I will not be able to suppress it." Elder Pu smiled, "I will not make things difficult for you." Although he said that, he was still afraid of the sand path. He only dared to take out some ordinary magical items and place them in front of the door. Then he silently recited a spell, and 3 magical talismans flew out and landed in front of him. He then took out a golden thread, and with a flick of his hand, it floated up into the air and transformed into thousands of threads, covering the entire path in front of him. After everything was set up, Zhang Zhen looked around and saw that there was nothing wrong with it. She said, "Zhenren Zhou, can you open the door now?" Zhou Ting nodded and looked at the sand path. What he did today was a huge risk for him. If he failed, not only would he cut off his path of advancement, he might even be punished by the clan. He might even be ordered to be reincarnated. But since the situation had come to this, he had to make a decision as soon as possible. He could not afford to hesitate any longer. He took out a talisman and waved his hand. The eternal sand path was instantly connected to the inside and outside. Although the door was open, there was no movement outside for a long time. The people here were all very patient. They all sat upright without moving. After an unknown period of time, as if a gust of cold wind had blown past, the golden thread in the passageway actually trembled slightly. Elder Pu's body leaned forward and looked outside. He thought, "It's here." Chapter 994. In the eternal sand path, the golden threads continued to sway. It was as if the wind was blowing on the surface of the water, and there were waves. But after a while, the movement disappeared. It was as if the demon had passed through this place. Zhou Ying saw that the 2 people from Huanzhen Temple were sitting still and could not help but worry. She looked at Zhou Ting with a questioning look, but he shook his head. "Do not suspect the person you use, and do not use the person you suspect." The cultivators of Huanzhen Temple had their own unique way of defeating demons. Since he had handed the matter over to them, he would not meddle in it. The reason why Zhang Zhen and Elder Pu didn't make a move was because the demon had already developed intelligence. Even if the door was opened, it wouldn't charge straight at them. Just now, they were just probing it. If they made a move now, it would only scare it away, and it wouldn't be easy to lure it out again. Naturally, the 2 of them wouldn't act in this way based on baseless assumptions. That was because the 2 of them had cultivated a pair of devil-destroying eyes that allowed them to see through the true form of devils. Such a small trick might be able to deceive Zhou Ting and the others, but it was impossible to deceive them. Sure enough, after waiting quietly for a long time, the golden thread suddenly swayed again. Elder Pu activated his transcendence vision and saw a blurry human figure suddenly barging into the formation. He couldn't help but smile. From an outsider's point of view, there was no difference between a real demon and a real demon, but as a disciple of the Inanna temple he understood the difference. If a true devil were to roll around in the mortal world, it would be infected by people's hearts, and its acquired wisdom would slowly surpass its nature. Then, it would become extremely cunning, and fighting with it would be no less than fighting with a cultivator of the same generation with profound cultivation. Seeing that this demon had taken the bait so easily, it was obvious that he hadn't been in the world for long, which made it easier to deal with him. Zhang Zhen also saw the true demon. Without any hesitation, she flicked her finger and a talisman flew out in front of her. The talisman flew into the air. A bolt of lightning flashed past. The devil was originally invisible, but when it was touched by the talisman, it was instantly destroyed. He was actually forced to reveal his true form. Elder Pu cooperated closely and saw an opportunity. He immediately followed up with a move, using his mana. Instantly, tens of lightning and fire struck down on his body. No matter what kind of demonic creature it was, they all feared lightning techniques, and this true devil was no exception. After suffering this thunder fire, it was in extreme pain, and its body twisted. Once again, he disappeared into the void. Even if they attack for a day and a night, they won't be able to break through. What's more important is to take care of this demon. Only when we get rid of this demon can we go out and fight the enemies. Wu Changdaoren said, "Whatever you say, spiritual master." Under the combined pressure of Zhang Zhen and Elder Pu, the devils were like trapped in a spider web, unable to escape. Bit by bit, they were killed and corroded. Another 2 hours passed, but the last 100 devils were still struggling on their deathbed. Seeing that the demon was getting weaker and weaker, the Yuxiao cultivators saw a glimmer of hope, and their spirits lifted. On the other hand, Elder Pu's expression was solemn. Even if only a wisp of the true devil's demonic aura managed to escape, it would not take long for it to return to its original form if it was nourished. Thus, they could not afford to relax at all. But at this moment, one of the demon's avatars suddenly shuddered, as if it had just woken up. He turned to look at the scene around him. After he was done, he sneered and sucked in all the demons around him into his body. Elder Pu instantly noticed that something was wrong, and immediately summoned lightning to strike down. Sima Quan looked at the lightning fire in the sky, and he wanted to laugh out loud. Just now that he had used the form-changing technique, his luck was a little bad, and he did not manage to steal the true demon's body. Instead, he was almost swallowed by the true demon. However, he was extremely unwilling to give up, so he used all his strength to protect his soul and prevent this devil from getting what he wanted. Coincidentally, the eternal sand path opened a spirit cave, and in comparison, the spirit cave was naturally more attractive to the true demon. Moreover, if it absorbed enough spiritual opportunity, it could easily swallow Sima Quan, which was why it gave up on him and went down. But who would have thought that it would be blocked in the eternal sand path, and was almost killed? This gave Sima Quan the chance to turn the tables on him. He was able to take over the true demon's body. Although it was extremely weak now, it could not be compared to when the true demon was at its peak just now. But he did not care. The true demon had just gained intelligence just now. To him, it was just an ignorant child who was just relying on its demonic instincts to do things. But he had close to 1,000 years of experience, and he knew all the secrets of the demon sect. There were no treasures here, so it wasn't hard for him to charge out when the demon wasn't paying attention. He first spat out a mouthful of Yin energy, which smashed into the lightning fire. Before it even reached his body, it exploded in the sky. Taking this chance, he thought back to the situation just now. In just a moment, he found a flaw that he could use. The reason why the devil had fallen into a passive position earlier was because the 3 talismans could restrain his shapeless transformation technique. However, he noticed that after each talisman fell, another would come up the next time, and so on and so forth. The true demon naturally wouldn't pay attention to such things, but in his eyes, it was different. He immediately deduced. Every time the talisman clashed with the true demon's body, it wasn't completely undamaged, so it needed a moment to breathe. Thinking about this, he smiled sinisterly. Shapeless transformation occurred, and he escaped from the golden silk net. When Zhang Zhen and Elder Pu saw this, they naturally summoned the talisman, wanting to break his transformation. But at this moment, Sima Quan took the initiative to show himself. Then he split into 3 silhouettes, and took the initiative to hit the 3 talismans. At first, they were also shaken back, but after a few times, the talisman's spiritual light dimmed. Elder Pu saw that his actions were no longer as reckless as before, but had become very methodical. He couldn't help but be startled. This demon, Zhang Zhen frowned and reached for the talisman from the sachet. But halfway through she remembered that they were under Zheng Yangxian altar, and she couldn't use the talisman, so she gave up. She hooked the lightning fire and hit the field. Sima Quan completely ignored the lightning fire. This technique could at most injure him, but it couldn't kill him. As long as he rushed out of this place, he could enter the spirit cave and absorb some spiritual vigor to recover. As for the golden silk, due to the slow rotation he easily dodged them. Under his all-out attack, one of the talismans finally couldn't take it anymore and turned into ashes. The other 2 were also destroyed after a few breaths. He was overjoyed and let out a loud laugh. He turned around, and in a few moments he disappeared in front of everyone. Zhou Ting stood up with a pale face and looked into the depths of the spirit cave. He stared at it for a long time without saying a word. Zhou Ting hurriedly asked, "My 2 friends, what is going on?" Elder Pu pondered for a moment and sighed. "I'm guessing that someone from the demon sect used the phase reversal technique, merging his own soul with this true demon's body. That's how he managed to escape." Elder Wu frowned. "But just now, we've obviously forced him into a desperate situation, so what if he obtained a soul?" Zhang Zhen said, "Having an external god's body is good. It's like an ignorant person gaining wisdom. The 2 can't be mentioned in the same breath." Zhou Ting asked in a low voice, "Can you 2 chase him back?" Zhang Zhen shook her head and sighed. "It's useless. Once a true demon enters the demon cave, it's like a dragon returning to the sea, or a tiger returning to the mountains. As long as there's a clone, it's hard to kill him." Elder Pu also said, "What a pity. If your sect allowed me to use the divine observation mirror, we could have killed this demon on the eternal sand path." Elder Wu saw that Zhou Ting's expression was very ugly and said, "Since you 2 can't kill this demon, can you stop him from coming out? As long as we can defeat the demon sect, we can ask the Grotto Heaven's people to come and suppress him." Zhang Zhen said, "It's not difficult to seal this entrance, but once a true demon enters the spirit cave, if he absorbs enough spiritual vigor, he might turn into a sky demon. Such a demon, even the Grotto Heaven's people might not be able to suppress him. I need to report this to my teacher immediately." Zhou Ting said, "How long will it take to turn into a sky demon?" Elder Pu thought for a while and said with difficulty, "But for a true demon with its own spirituality to cultivate the sky demon's body, it will take at least hundreds of years. But for the demon sect's elders who know how to use the demon cave to achieve it, it might only take 2 to 4 hours." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.